Yo, let me tell you about the lore.
Alright guys, and welcome back to Season 2. That's right, Season 2 of Super Lore Boys, podcast about Super Turbo and its origins. In Season 1, our theme was about the World Warrior, so we pretty much traveled all throughout the world, getting stories from the players, and this time around, we're actually going to be going on the hunt for the OG lore, starting directly from the source with our first guest, James Chen, aka Jay Chenser, the historian, the librarian, the storyteller, the commentator, the man does it all. How's it going today, man?
Doing pretty good. Always happy to sit down and talk about Super Turbo. I hope I have all the lore that you're looking for.
I mean, to be fair, I don't know if we can even cover all of it in one sitting. So this will maybe be like an outline with some fill, but hopefully, we can get through everything at some point. I think you definitely have a story to tell through all the time that you've been in the scene. So just to load up your player card here. You got your FGC years, basically infinity, longer than the FGC technically existed. Tell me about that.
Someone asked me one time, like, during Street Fighter II World Warrior, what was the FGC like? And I was like, there was no FGC, so technically speaking, before, during World Warrior, it was really about your arcade versus other arcades. There was no internet. We weren't sharing any information. And obviously, I'm in Southern California, so I have a little bit of advantage because that's where a lot of the history of Tomo Ohira and Pico Rivera, I'm sure people have heard these names before. It's where it all started. But even so, with as little ability to spread information as there was during that time, it was really surprising how much information spread around. And this is without an actual FGC, but I still remember going to a random video store in, my hometown. There was a World Warrior cabinet there, and people were doing, all the handcuffs and all the magic throws and everything. Like, people figured stuff out, and word spread pretty well, even without any sort of internet. So, yeah, we didn't really have an FGC, but word of mouth was pretty crazy back then.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing that everyone can just figure out all these techniques, and we end up speaking the same language in a way, which is something that I wanted to get to later on as far as the technical terms and, the origins of that. But yeah, as far as US goes, you're basically in the heart of, where Street Fighter formed, with the World Warrior. Your other favorite games, looking like Tetris, which we know, Final Fantasy VI, and Silent Hill, these are all critically acclaimed games. So if you want to quickly just say your favorite aspect about all of them.
Tetris to me is just art. It's the perfect video game. I don't think there can ever be a video game created as perfect as Tetris, because if I don't tell you any rules of Tetris and I sit you down in front of it and I tell you to play it and you start moving it around, the instant you put some pieces not tightly together, you're like, oh, and your brain already tells you it's badly placed. I don't have to explain anything, and you will learn how to play Tetris. And to me, that's just the perfect video game. And it's weird because I'm not a person when it comes to stories, I'm not video games have to have stories to be art or whatever. But Final Fantasy VI and Silent Hill 2 have two of the best stories in video games ever created. It's hard because Silent Hill 2 kind of has that problem that it hasn't aged well in terms of mechanics, but the story is still one of the best. And Final Fantasy VI, I think, is just the one of the greatest video games ever made. I can probably talk about as long about Final Fantasy VI as I can about Super Turbo.
We'll have to save that for the Final Fantasy podcast, but yeah, clearly, just off of favorite games, we know that you have good taste. I too can honestly talk about Tetris, not the NES version, but Game Boy. It's the one that I owned as a kid, and
yeah,
it's quite a bit different. It's very different, in fact. But my thing with Tetris, I would always use it as a kid to clear my mind, and I could tell from my play if I had too much on my mind. So I would, go to level 9, and if I couldn't get over like 150 lines or something, I'd be like, all right, like there's too much in my mind. I need to, diffuse in some type of way. So I'd switch over to type B, and make it level 9, high 5. Something like that, and try to clear that. If I could clear that, then I can clear my mind. It was a weird thing.
That's cool.
But I feel like I can play Tetris, and it would explain like what my state of mind is. And maybe, not the super high level pros, but like the average person, if you give them Tetris, maybe there's a way to like kind of determine what their thought process is. That's how I always felt about Tetris.
That's really cool, actually. That is really cool.
Yeah, sometimes, you got to play that to clear your mind. Like you said, it's such an intuitive, it's an easy game to get into, and, you kind of express yourself there as well. For blood type, actually, for season 1, I did have everyone tell me their blood type. A lot of people had to look it up, so people didn't remember. In this case, James also couldn't remember, guys. Go ahead.
The true story is that I actually didn't know my blood type until maybe like 2 or 3 years ago, because in Chinese superstition, blood type determines personality a lot as well. And so my parents were always like, "What's your blood type? What's your blood type?" And I'm like, "I don't know." And they asked me to check, and I checked it. And I don't remember what it is. Like, literally, if I wanted to know, I could call my mom and she'd probably tell me, because I've told her and now she'll remember because of what it means, But offhand, I don't remember what it is.
Yeah, so it's like Tetris. Your blood type tells a lot about who you are as well, I guess.
Yep.
And then your likes, so you like cats and noodles. I think we've seen, quite a bit on your stream. You always got your cats. How many cats do you have right now?
Just the 2 cats, and I love them to death. And honestly, I don't know what I'd do without them. They keep me sane for sure, for sure.
Crazy cat man, James Chen.
Yeah. No, I am definitely crazy cat mom Chen. I have no qualms about admitting that whatsoever. So.
And then for dislikes, U.S. healthcare, a bit of a touchy topic, but this time around as well. Actually, we asked for fun facts, and your fun fact is your handle, J. Chenser. It comes from "They Might Be Giants," They Might Be Giants song. Meet James and Sir.
Yeah, the very
don't
first
know
thing.
That song.
Yeah, the very first thing I ever did on the internet was I joined a They Might Be Giants newsletter, and they had just released a brand new album, and one of the songs was Meet James Enzor on there, and I was like, perfect, I'll call myself James Chenzor, and then UCLA finally gave email addresses to all their students. This is kind of an indication how old I am. I was at UCLA when all the students got a personal email account, and it had to be 8 letters or shorter, 8 characters or shorter. And so I chose J. Chenzor. That's what I used to talk on AGSF2, Alt Games SF2, which was the news groups back then. And so I got stuck as J. Chenzor, and that's what I've been ever since. So They Might Be Giants is a band from Brooklyn. They've been around for like 30 years now, so they're an amazing band, but they're definitely a geek rock band, so they're definitely more niche.
Damn, they're from my neck of the woods. That's where I'm from, originally Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Dang, so we have a lot of ground to cover. First off, just to like list some of your accolades. You're gifted at multiple fighting games. You do your commentary. You have your podcast. You're streaming. Back in the day, writing FAQs.
Yeah.
You have quite a bit of catchphrases. Some of them we know is it gonna kill, but there's another one that I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's
that
one.
Famous ones on the Twitterverse. Yes, that is true. There's a lot of lore behind that one too.
Yeah,
so.
we're gonna have to unlock that door as well at some point, James. Sorry.
Yeah, no, honestly, it really all kind of started with just from the time it probably started around Alpha 1 that I wrote the very first FAQ I ever wrote was a Sodom guide, actually, in Alpha 1 back on brawl.mind. Oh gosh, I can't even remember what it's called anymore. Mindlink.net, I think brawl.mindlink.net.
CJB.net.
Yeah, exactly. It was like one of the first places where people could actually gather to talk about fighting games and stuff. And, from there, I just kept trying to be in. I got involved mostly into the FGC through Alt Games SF2, and then from there, you know, I just started writing FAQs a lot because I would like to break down games, and it really kind of started with X-Men Children of the Atom, because I started discovering like how to do all these crazy combos. Like not everybody was doing like launcher and the super jump stuff, so I was like, I'll write FAQs for that, and it just kind of exploded from there. I kind of prided myself on being really good for educational purposes, so I kept doing that. Then when Shoryuken.com started, I started writing articles, I started doing combo videos, kept writing FAQs, and then, you know, I was in the forums trying to help people learn to play, and then eventually it just kind of led to the proper direction of being a commentator and trying to help people learn fighting games through that. And that's kind of where I am now, is mostly a fighting game, mostly a fighting game commentator. Yeah,
you know, I remember you know, when I was growing up and reading FAQs, it'd be for, you know, like Earthworm and Jim or the cheat codes for NBA Jam.
Yeah.
And I didn't own a computer yet. Like, I was a young kid, so I'd go to the library every day, go on GameFAQs or, you know, whatever the websites were back then, and like print them out, bring them home, be like, all right, cool, you know, I know how to do this. So at that time, I'm guessing, you know, you had access to a computer, you had internet, and you were just like banging out these, you know, FAQs and stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, like, it's funny because, you know, you said that you would print out some of these FAQs and stuff, and like my CVS2 guide is like on Word document, it's like 200 and some pages or something like that. God. And one person actually, I think it was like B4 or B5, walked up to me and was like, hey, check this out. Like, and he showed me a notebook, and he had printed out the entire CVS2 guide and had it, you know, 3-ring hole punched and put into a binder.
Wow.
And I just looked at him and I was like, you killed a tree.
Yeah, it's meant to be on the digital space, or we talk about it in person. Yeah,
exactly. I was like, man. But yeah, no, I mean, so it's just one of those things. I've always wanted to, because I love fighting games so much, right? And this is kind of getting into where my philosophy lies in. And, you know, I just wanted to spread the gospel of fighting games forever. And that's kind of where I've been most of the time. And like I said, I feel like commentary is probably one of the most important aspects of being able to do that now, which is why I decided to focus so heavily on commentary, because, you know, I like being excited. And I feel like if you're a fan of the game, if you're just a fanboy like I am, like when I do commentary, I'm just being a fan, and I just get excited and yell. And there was the Co-op Cup earlier this year.
Oh, and, my God. Yo, the Cooney fight?
Dude, the Cooney, yeah, the Cooney and the what was it?
Dang it, yeah, I'm having a brain fart. The Makoto player.
Yeah.
Star Trek players are gonna hate me forever.
I know, right? And same here, dude. But they already hate me, but that's another story. But here's, like, when that fight was happening, like, I started commentating. And I'm sitting at home, you know? It's no one's hearing me. And that's the thing, is like, if you just enjoy the game, if you're a fan of the game and you love the game, and you just like that's why I commentate, because I just feel like I can bring that energy and that love and that excitement to it out there, you know? And it's why I choose to do what I do, basically.
I imagine when you just catch a train as the doors are closing, you're like, wow, that's a one frame link, or like your whole life, you just like bring it back to some kind of mechanic. Yeah.
I mean, there have been times where like me and David will just be like sitting in the hotel room watching on the monitor and stuff, and then like something will happen, and then like David would be like, oh, that was interesting because, you know, what he was trying to do is this, and I'm like, yeah, and he was, and it's like, are we just commentating right now? So yeah. It was Tomonagi, right? Isn't that the name of the Makoto player?
Tominaga?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Okay,
that's right.
Okay.
Yeah, good
Okay,
call.
I just don't want, you know, the FGC internets to be like, these phonies.
These guys think, telling ST Lord, they don't even know what's going on in Street Fighter 3. Master commentator, my foot now.
Right.
But actually, there's a couple other things on the list as well. For your accolades before we get into ST that I just wanted to highlight. So if you guys want to know about all of these things, as a precursor, some of these topics might come up, but due to interest in time and trying to get out as much of like the Super Turbo lore as possible, Maybe like not all those topics that I just discussed previously will show up. You also did the dope Indestructible remix, right? We heard that one.
Oh, you mean singing?
Yeah,
during
that one. Yeah. That's some lore. So if you guys haven't heard that, just YouTube it. It's pretty funny. Obviously, your recent journey with Tetris. Although you've been in, you've had a history with Tetris.
Right.
Like you were in a magazine, one of those, what is it, EGM maybe? I forget
which
Nintendo
magazine. Power.
Nintendo Power.
Yeah.
Having top records in Tetris. So you're one of the OGs for Tetris as well.
Yeah, well, just a really quick story on that. When I first got involved in the Tetris commentary, the group was just like putting out a call like, oh, we would like to test out new commentators if you'd like to try. And a friend messaged me, and they on the Facebook, they announced it after I sent in a trial video. And on their Facebook, somebody replied with like, why are you getting this fighting game commentator? What does he know about Tetris? This is like a stunt casting or whatever, blah, blah, blah. Get some real Tetris players. And then I did the broadcast. And then afterwards I went in, I was like, I hope I did okay, just like responding to him. And he was like, no, you knew what you were talking about. It's all good.
I would have just brought that magazine. I would have went to that tournament and flexed. Like I would have held it like a flex. Like I'm just flexing with the magazine. Or beat him up like Jason Bourne with the magazine. But anyhow,
stick it in a toaster and make his house blow up. Yeah, exactly.
But there's one other one that we haven't talked about yet, and I think this might be the first time I saw your name actually. Wasn't from the FAQs. It was actually from combo videos.
Yeah.
So you were making combo videos a long time ago. I'd see all the time, Jay Chensor. I'm like, and then later on I saw James Chen. I'm like, are they the same person? Is it a coincidence? So how did you get into like combo videos? I want to know about that.
I just liked doing combos. I was obsessed with combos. And like I said, when X-Men Children of the Atom came out, like I was doing all of the launching combos and stuff, because it wasn't as obvious before, because in modern games there are moves that are deemed launchers, and when you hit them with it, you hit up, you automatically super jump, whatever. In Children of the Atom, it's just every normal was super jump cancelable, and whatever direction you hit them, you just hit them in that direction. So certain moves just happen to hit them slightly upwards, more upwards. So if you hit him, you had to input the fold down up to super jump and go after him. And I was one of the first people to start doing that at my arcade. I was one of the first people in Alpha 1 that was doing like low short, low forward into super with Ken and things like that. So I was always obsessed with combos. And when Street Fighter Alpha came out on the Saturn, there was a training mode, and it's like right now it's the worst training mode you've ever seen in your life. It had literally no features and it was awful, but it was there and it was glorious, because I used to do combos on the Super Nintendo Street Fighter 2 by blocking with my toe, my big toe, to make sure that I was doing the combos, because there was no combo meter on Hyper Fighting and on classic Street Fighter 2. So I would do jump fierce and with my toe hit down back to see if I could actually do the combo. And basically what would happen is I would start doing these combos and I would tell people and people wouldn't believe me. They're like, no, that's not possible. And so when I first got my job after I graduated from college, one of the first things I bought was a capture card. And I was like, I'm just going to start recording these and show people that I can do these combos. And it just kind of went from there. And it was just, like I said, I enjoyed combos so much. The execution aspect of fighting games was like so fun for me. And it probably came from the fact that I learned piano when I was a kid. But like that kind of thing of execution and practice just kind of transferred over to fighting games for me, and so I just was a fan of execution ever since. And
yeah, there's a certain kind of beauty to combo videos as well. At the time, it was you, then NKI. I think on like combovideos.com, there's like a little fire, like a fireman in one of the O's or something. I remember the logo vaguely. Then Maj Presents. So when I would go to tournaments, I landed a combo. I'd be like, Maj Presents. Like I'll just say it at the end of it as a joke. I'm like, Jay Chetcher NKI Presents. Because that's kind of like how a lot of combo videos started. There was like a flow. Right. But combo videos in a way were shot like film. Like it was like theater. It was like watching a movie. It was different. And I would download them, save them on my CDRs, just watch them over. Like, wow, someone actually put in the time to do, the Cyclops Infinite or whatever it is.
Dude,
so I always found that cool.
I can tell you right now, I have a hard drive still sitting here at my desk that has a lot of those combo videos on there. I've saved a lot of them. So I have like this big old archive on this external hard drive that I keep backing up and stuff to making sure that I never lose these things. So I have a lot of history on my desk in terms of combo videos right now.
Yeah, we need to get an HD re-release with, translated in all languages and all that stuff. But yeah, like combo videos is an art. And I know that recently when you went to the offline Fightcade event, you met with TZW. Yeah. Tell me about TZW.
TZW, he's actually, you know what, to be fair, he is kind of what inspired me to make combo videos. Because we would get the VHSs of TZW, the ones that have been copied 4 times over already, and have the terrible tracking in the line. I don't even know, people don't even know what tracking is anymore these days. Man, but like you could barely watch it, but TZW, these combo videos, and as a combo person, I would always be kind of mad, like sitting there like, oh, I could do that. You know how everybody is, I could do that,
Yeah.
And so that's one of the reasons why I started doing combo video, because I wanted to prove to people that I could do that too, but TZW is still a class above anything that I can do, and he is just ridiculous. And to be honest with you, to be able to meet him at Fightcade offline, like it was seriously like meeting one of my heroes. It was like, I don't know if I could have expressed to him how much it meant to me to have met him like that. You know what I mean? Like it probably would have started verging on weird and stalkerish if I really started like bowing at his feet and kissing his feet and stuff. He'd probably be like, okay, I don't want to talk to you for the rest of the weekend.
Yeah, I mean, because in a tournament, it's like, oh yeah, you landed a combo, but in a combo video, I mean, and we have the picture loaded up over here so you can see. But yeah, even like TCW would do the combo where the character is at 80% of their health bar left, and the combo does exactly 80%, and it ends at time over, like stuff like that.
Yeah,
super calculated, like it's an art form for him. That's why I think it's like TZW art. It's like his like full handle.
Yeah. And
so
he would even he even like knew all the crazy things like the CPS1 chain way before anybody else was doing it, because I would see him do a lot of the things like the Guile crouch short into back fist, and I'm like, how does he do that? I can't make that what is he doing? And I never made any, like, I just had no idea how he was doing all that stuff. So
yeah, and also I can give you a quick fun fact about TZW. Last year I was planning a trip to Japan, and we were set to fight. He agreed an exhibition, first to 10 between him and I and ST, but unfortunately it didn't get to happen. And the whole thing is that like it was to see, for me it was gonna be how much like style can I do, because with Dictator I try to do as many like super combos, like combo into super as much as possible, right. And I know he does the same, and it's a pretty balanced matchup as well. So I just wanted to like really hype it up. It was gonna be a Kimono Michi at GameSpot versus, not the Daigo one. It's a separate Kimono Michi.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, tell me about the Fightcade offline festival.
Oh, it was amazing. I mean, like, there's so many facets of this event that it was hard to express, because what you don't realize is how big of a super turbo scene there is in Europe, particularly Spain, right? Because like 3 of the guys in that picture there are the guys who made Fightcade and made Fightcade 2, and they picked me up from a random bus station that I was lost at, and I was like, I don't know where and they picked me up, and we were talking, and I was like, yeah, Fightcade's cool, and they're like, yeah, we made it, and I was like, what? And like and it's crazy that these guys were so into Super Turbo, and Super Turbo is such a big deal, to the fact that to the point where someone in Spain has 1 billion cabinets of fighting games and schmutz. And the craziest thing about it, what was the city? It's like Merchante, I think was the name of the town that we were in. You know how like when you travel a lot, so I've had the benefit of being able to travel a lot. one of the things that you discover is that most of the world is similar to actually what you experience in your own place. Like, I've been to Kuwait, I've been to like Chile and everything like this. And like when you go there, you expect everything to be like, oh, you know, it's backwater. It's not as technologically. No, actually you go to all these places and they're very modernized and, you know, it's not anything like you think. However, Merchante is seriously like one of those romantic comedy movies where some guy has to visit Spain and they're in that little town where everybody knows everybody else. And, you know, like that's literally what that town was like. And they rented out their theater, and like the only theater I think that they had in there that they could actually move the seats and stuff like that. And that's why we're in the picture you see there, we're on the stage. So there's actually a stage, and then there's the place where the people are sitting, but all the chairs were removed, and that's where all the cabinets were placed. And it was such a weird thing to see, driving through this town where the roads are windy and cobblestone and barely wide enough to fit two cars, so that cars would have to like let each other pass. The parking is like, you know, you could barely walk through everything, and then you pass by this building and look inside and cabinets, you know.
it just goes to show that like in every pocket of the world there's some love for ST, and it's deep. Like that's, you know, that's kind of unimaginable. Maybe, you know, 2 decades ago when people were playing ST, they didn't think that it would get to this point, right? I mean, I guess you
absolutely.
could tell me. Yeah, it's pretty cool. I'm glad that you were able to experience this tournament and meet your hero. I just remember hearing about it, or maybe I saw a tweet from you or a picture, and I was like, oh man, like you got to meet his hero at TCW. It's great. Yeah. All from the love of Super Turbo.
Dude, I'll be honest with you, that's all I was thinking the entire time I was in Spain. I'm like, I'm here because of Super Turbo. Like, what life am I living right now? It was the weirdest thing, but it was one of those trips that I don't think I would ever forget, just because of how cool it was, you know, just to see this passion for Super Turbo in this small town from so many people, and you know, to obviously share that same passion.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully, like, we'll be able to, you know, do that again soon with the way that things are going. We did jump the gun a little bit and kind of went more into present time, but I just, you know, I thought it was a good story, linking like combo video to TCW. Let's bring it back to actually your first interaction with Street Fighter. So we're going back to the way beginning.
Okay. This one's actually, I still remember it too. My first interaction with Street Fighter, not actually physically, but hearing about it. So me and I have an older brother who's about 3.5 years older than me. And the two of us love video games. We grew up, we're still like practically best friends. And, you know, we're even to this day, and we've always got along really well. He went to UCLA while I was still in college, and UCLA at the time had basically the most bomb-ass arcade, okay? Their arcade there was ridiculous. In fact, it's, to tell a story later on, it's 100% the reason why I went to UCLA. I'm not gonna lie, it's because they had the best arcade. So that's why
in your blood type. It's in your blood type, bro.
That is my blood type right there. Yeah. It's arcade.
Blood type arcade. Arcade.
Yeah, there you go. And so my brother would go there, and he would go to the arcade all the time. Like, he would play a bunch of different games. He kept telling me about all the games that he would get into, like Strider, or, you know, TMNT arcade game. They had Dragon's Lair 2. And then one day he just calls me and he's like, yo, dude, there's this crazy game there called Street Fighter 2. And it's the most wild game. And as he was describing it to me, like, there's this Indian guy who stretches and breathes fire. Like, I'm picturing like this 3D game, like 3D playing game, kind of like Final Fight or even like Renegade, you know, with like these cheesy graphics and everything. But he just kept telling me all about it and giving me all these stories. And one weekend he came and visited. I mean, he came back home, you know, he would come back home most weekends. And then he was like, we were like, let's go see if we can find one near our house. And this was in San Bernardino. And there was this arcade called Laser Blast that we always saw, that we always knew existed, but we never gone inside it because, you know, our parents were always scared of arcades because arcades are seedy, you know, et cetera, and everything. But we were old enough at this point that our parents were like, whatever, do whatever you want. And so we went to the arcade, and sure enough, it was there. And I remember seeing it the first time, and it looked nothing like it did in my head. And it was, I mean, I don't know if people can quite understand how beautiful the game is. Like, as a graphical, technological marvel for its time, the game was absolutely stunning. I had never seen anything like that. Like, Pit Fighter was like my frame of reference, you know?
Right. I mean, sometimes I think, like, I mean, this is going to be a huge stretch, but I know there are some people that might believe this theory. I'm about to say it for the first time, but that aliens or, like, you know, someone from the future traveled back in time, just planted the seed for Street Fighter. Because, like how can you make such a perfect game, honestly, right? Like with the Street Fighter 2 series, between the way that the mechanics work and, you know, just having the timer and the life bar, the music, moves, the stages, just having all the different cultures and win quotes and endings and and just everything about it.
One of the things people don't seem to realize how crazy it was either. You know, I referenced a game like Pit Fighter. There was a lot of games like that. Yi Are Kung Fu, you know, these kind of little fights, you know, these things as you go and beat the game. But you had never been able to use any of the guys that you fight against. And so, you know, one of the things always was that these boss characters always were cheap. They had things that you couldn't do that were so broken. And so Street Fighter 2, all of a sudden, it's like you fight this weird yellow-green monster with electricity, but then if he's broken, you can play him. and that was such a big deal. And in fact, you know, this is a story I've told to other people before, but like my mindset at the time was so fixated on the computer just cheats and does stuff that you can't do, was that we didn't know how to spinning pile driver. We didn't, and I was 100% positive it was a CPU only move because it would be too broken if a person could do it. Because we tried every charge motion, we tried every quarter circle forward, half circle like Dulcim, and we tried everything, and you could never SPD. Who thought to spin the controller wildly? And so my brother was like, no, I guarantee you there's a way a person can do it. I'm like, no, it's impossible, it'd be too good. Dude. And so we would put in quarters and we would sit there and try because I don't know if people know this, but in the original Street Fighter 2, you could totally cheese it if you had a friend and you guys wanted to play it. There were 10 rounds in the game, right? If you tied, you would go from round 1, round 2, round 3, round 4, round 5, round 6, round 7.
And World Warrior?
Yeah, all the way till final round. So if you fought against a friend of yours and you only took 1 pixel of damage on every chip once you got low enough in life, you would fight until one person's about to die and be like, okay, you won that one. And then you would tie your life and then you would be able to play 10 rounds.
Damn, really stretching that quarter out. George Washington with the 5 head. Yeah. George Washington looking like a dollar coin right now.
And that's why Champion Edition got rid of that.
Yeah.
Because they like, But we were doing that. And literally we were trying everything to do a spinning pile driver. And eventually my brother walked up to me and was like, I don't know, and just started mashing on the controller, and he accidentally did like a whiff standing strong 360 in the punch, and it came out, and both of us were like,
it is
what?
Possible.
And
That's so sick.
And the funniest thing about it is we still didn't know how to do it afterwards. We were like, how did you do that? I don't know. And so like, it wasn't a while until we actually figured out how to do it. But at least we knew it was possible, so.
Yeah, it's funny because February is going to mark the 30th year for World Warrior, so I'm actually running a tournament for World Warrior on Fightcade.
Nice.
And I want to get as many people as possible. Just even playing it recently, I'm like, this game is freaking good. It's not balanced by any means, but for back then, if I was like, you know, young adult playing, I would probably had I would have done the same thing you did, stretch that quarter out for 10 rounds.
And a lot of people don't actually know there were patches back then too. They were actually upgrade chips to World Warrior. So like the very first version of World Warrior is different than the final version of World Warrior before it went to Champion Edition.
Which you can tell from like the date, right? Like when the board loads up and has a date on it.
Yeah, there's like a version or something there. But like some of the early ones, like Ryu and Chun-Li and like their standing heavy kicks were basically unstoppable anti-airs. Like if you jumped, and because the game was so damn slow, like everyone could just heavy kick you out of the air, and there was like nothing you could do about it. And they weakened the hitboxes on those. At least, you know, based on I have no scientific evidence. I should try to check it out one of these days by looking at hitboxes and stuff. But that's kind of what we noticed, you know. There's also the legendary version of the 10-0 matchup of Zangief versus Honda that the SPD grabbed far enough to grab Honda at the beginning of the round. So it was round 1, fight, spinning pile driver. And I think that was the very first version. So
yeah, I imagine doing this tournament and someone coming out like, hey, my Saiyan Roundhouse should be entering all the time. This is BS. And I'm like, what? So we're playing on it. Yeah, come see me on the first version, bro.
Exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess there were those, those ninja patches happening back then, and people were figuring stuff out, and it was getting solved. So that's good. Yeah. When did you get into like a competitive point for Street Fighter 2 then?
In fact, I even have a picture of it on my phone. I probably should have sent it to you, actually. Maybe I could send it to you via Twitter or something, or on Discord or something like that.
Yeah, I can post it in post-production. I'll have it on the screen at this point.
Yeah, no problem.
You gave it to me, so yeah.
Let me see if I can find it, because I just went home to my parents' house to look for something. And I didn't find the one that I was looking for, but I found the other one. So basically, for Street Fighter 2 at my arcade, it was me, my brother, and one of our friends named Chan, who were basically the 3 best at that arcade. We thought we were the best, basically. And so there was a tournament at our local mini golf course called Castle Park. And Castle Park ran a Street Fighter 2 tournament, so the 3 of us went there to go play that. I just posted the picture on our Discord thing.
Okay, I'll take a look at it.
That's the rule sheet that they had for it. It says Castle Park official rules, and there's like, after each round, players must deposit another coin. Player that wins the round will advance to the next round. You know, like it was like the early rule sheet for the tournament. And so that was the first tournament that we ever played in. Myself, Chan, and my brother got first, second, and third. I got third place at the time because they were better than I was at the time. But, that was my first tournament. However, even then, I still wasn't super good. And because, we would go, Pico Rivera started becoming a thing. That's where World's Finest Comic was, where Tomo played, where Mike Watson really basically became, one of the best players of all time and stuff. I mean, there's a lot of stories there too. I had never really competed in that tournament except for one time because, when I first heard about it, I was like, what? And that's what I was looking for. The third tournament that they ever ran at the World's Finest, Tony, Roger, and God, I always forget the fourth person's name, but the I think it's Vinod, I think his name is, or something like that. But the 4 of them went around all of Southern California and passed out flyers to their tournament, and I know I still have that flyer somewhere.
Oh man,
and I was
history.
Yeah, so I was trying to find it and I couldn't find it at my parents' house, so it might be buried somewhere in my house, so I'm probably going to try to look for it at some point. But that's how I heard about Pico Rivera. We went there and it was like a whole new world opened up. What I thought Street Fighter was not what it was. And that's a whole story in itself, because Tomo and Tony were the ones that showed up to the Laser Blast arcade, and they showed us how much we didn't know about Street Fighter. But to keep going down the right path on the story, I never was really very competitive until actually I started going to UCLA. And it was at the tail end of Super Turbo, beginning of Alpha 1, and I started playing. And then in Alpha 2, I started going to Southern Hills Golfland and entering tournaments there. And that was probably where I first really, really started playing like seriously and heavily in trying to win these tournaments.
That's pretty cool. You actually brought up a couple of things. I think that whole like handing out flyers for your tournament is the coolest thing ever, right? That's like kumite, or you know, you need to get, it's like a how do you say it? It's a community. It's literally like the origins of, hey, there's this thing that I like, and I want to get more people into it. What's the best way of doing it? I don't know. Just go out on the street and find them. We're street fighters.
Yeah, like you've been watching Cobra Kai, you know, where like he's handing out flyers to Cobra Kai, you know.
Yeah, it's like that.
That's how it was, man.
Yo.
And
it's like, you want to join my gym?
Because the thing is, it was weird because at that time, that's when tick throws were considered broken. Everybody would do short, run up throw. And it was considered cheap, and that's why everybody was like, oh, I'll fight you if you threw and stuff like that. And it was crazy because Tony and Tomo showed up to our arcade, and we were still used to just tick throws, and these guys were the hot shots. And so me and my brother were like, well, we're kind of the best. Let's take them on and whatever like that. And they did this crazy thing where they did short, walk up, sweep. And we would stand up and get swept every single time. And after a while, I started figuring out what was happening. And I'd be like, what the heck? I can't keep myself from standing up. Like, he kept sweeping. And even though I knew he was going to do it, I kept getting swept. It was like, what? You can put another layer on mind games?
the OG VACC?
Yeah. And then the craziest thing about it was that these guys came, they kicked our asses, and we were like, what the hell? And they're like, yeah, we're here trying to spread the word of these tournaments and everything like that. And me and my brother were like, yeah, we're definitely going to go check this out. Like, I can't believe how bad we are, right? And then Tomo and Tony actually looked at us and they're like, look, we're not going to lie. You're some of the better people we've played. And we were like, what? Oh my God. And yeah, but when we went to the first Pico Rivera tournament, you know, Tomo, like, a lot of people, there's this argument now, like, is Tomo that good? If he was playing today, would he be good? And like, having seen it myself, I can't say that he wouldn't be. Like, he was doing things back then that we didn't have names for, you know? Like, he was playing a tournament, he was using Ryu against the Chun, and he uppercutted every low forward and every low roundhouse that she did. And if she didn't touch those buttons, he didn't uppercut. And it was like, what? How is this possible? But he was probably doing motion and confirming only the button on the super slow game. But those kind of things we didn't know about, those techniques that he just kind of was doing. During tournament, he was fighting against some guy and he was like, watch, I'm going to beat him with only the light kick button. And he beat him with Guile using only light kick and like destroyed him. And like, we saw like round one fight, Chun-Li ran up to a Guile and did standing fierce, and he went Sonic, and he got punched in the face before the Sonic Boom came out. We were like, what? And then that was also the time we saw, you know, round one fight, Hadouken, Sonic Boom, and then Guile backfisting Ryu while he's still stuck in the Hadouken.
So
we were
Tomo
like,
made that up.
we were like, what? This is a thing? Oh my God. Like it was like the way that I've described it to everybody. It's like when James Bond walks into the Q branch and you see all those crazy inventions and like all these crazy. That was what me and my brother were like walking into that comic book shop. And keep in mind, it was a tiny comic book shop with 2 cabinets. And but like the competition there and it was packed. It was like standing room only. It was ridiculous in there. That's how many people were playing.
Yeah, I think on the subject of Tomo, I'm so glad you brought it up. I figured that it would have got brought up. I didn't even have a question prepared for this. But yeah, when people are like, you know, would he hold up, you know, today? Mm-hmm. You know, I gotta say so too, based on everyone's stories. And, you know, it's possible for one person to be way ahead of the curve. I mean, right. If he was winning everything, you can't say like, oh, well, not everyone else, like everyone else was just bad. Like that logically doesn't make sense.
Right.
You know, you could find classic footage of ST and new challengers, and there's some, high level stuff like real footsies and, anti-airs, whiff punishing, those things existed. So yeah, I mean, it could just be that Tomo's way ahead of everyone. So I don't really doubt it. I think today there are a lot more people that can match that style, or everyone's caught up, but definitely like back then it can't be debated. Like no one has had evidence saying that never happened. Everyone only has, the evidence of first-hand experience. He said this, he did that.
It's funny because Knuckle-Doo reminds me so much of a modern Tomo. They even look the same. They even have very similar looks, expressions, and kind of body language and stuff. And so, like, part of me feels like, Knuckle-Doo is almost kind of like the
spirit,
like the spirit of it in a weird way. But one of the stories that I also tell, and it's not my story to tell, but I tell people a lot about it. L.A. Akira, who is Gerald Abraham, the guy who runs Okamoto Kitchen. You've probably seen me retweet his stuff every once in a while. It's a food truck. He was the first player from America to go to Japan and actually challenge people. He went back in the Champion Edition days when Tomo and everybody were still playing, and he was part of the Mike Watson, the Tomo, the Jeff Schaefer. I mean, he's L.A. Akira, Jeff Schaefer is L.A. Akuma. They're good friends, and Gerald has said he basically never could beat Tomo. He was like, I can't beat Tomo. Tomo is just like too stupidly good. And then when he went to Japan and he has photos of himself talking to like one of the champions of Street Fighter then, the way Champion, they ran a national tournament in Japan. And how they set it up is because it was the first time you could play same character versus same character. There was a Ken tournament where all the Ken players had to play, and there was a Guile tournament and where all the Guile players had to play. Weird. And so whoever won that would all go into the final tournament. And Gerald, when he got there, his main character was not Ken, but it was the only tournament that had any openings left of a character I think that he felt he was good enough at. And he told me he got like third or second place in that tournament. And he said, judging from what he had played, that Tomo was definitely better than everyone. And so he's probably one of the only people that has a real sense of how good some of the players are, because he's one of the only people that has played versus Japan back then. And I do think like people don't realize how big Street Fighter 2 was when World Warrior was around. I mean, everybody played it. I know like it's still probably nothing compared to what we have today because of online and video games are actually acceptable and stuff. But if you think about it, back then when video games were still considered taboo, and this was even before we had the M rating because of Mortal Kombat and all this stuff, to have that many people playing this game all around the world to the point where everybody everywhere was playing at this ridiculous level is kind of an indication of just how widespread the phenomenon of Street Fighter 2 was. I still don't think I've seen anything like it since Pac-Man. Honestly, I always say it was Pac-Man and Street Fighter 2 were the biggest video game cultural phenomenons that I think I've ever seen. Obviously you have Mario and Zelda, but those are like more long-lasting and for home consoles. This was for arcade cabinets.
Right, you had to go out. You had to go out there, and then there's a huge competitive nature. It's not Mario's like a one-player game, and
right.
This is community. This is figuring things out, working together, having rivals, traveling around. This was a lot. It was pretty heavy.
Yeah.
I hope one of these days I can get Tomo on here and just pick his brain about stuff. Because anyone you talk to that's old school, they'll tell you about Tomo, but I want to hear from Tomo.
You should talk to Mike Watson. He's still in contact with Tomo. So yeah. Watson could help you out there. Watson obviously would also be another great person to have because he obviously has all the stories.
Yeah, I mean he was on Mutant XP's podcast, The Mutant Experience, recently, maybe 2 months back.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, I listened to a good chunk of it. It was pretty long, but yeah, it was some great stuff. I would love to have Mike Watson here as well. All right, so moving on. So now we're in like the CPS1 games of Street Fighter, so it's World Warrior, CE. How was hyper fighting received after Champion Edition?
Everybody.
Or at that point, I know you said you were competitive more so
Right.
like tail end of stuff, but would you happen to know?
So here's the thing, Champion Edition is broken, right? I mean, Bison is dumb, okay? Bison is the best character in the game. Guile has the best chance of fighting him, and Bison probably still has a winning matchup over Guile. Like, that's how bad it was.
Well,
like,
current meta, I mean, because I don't know if you know this, but like CE is the game that I follow the most. Kind of, sort of.
Oh yeah.
It's my favorite game because it's similar to Tetris in the sense that like every move matters because of like the game speed, and one mistake is fatal.
Yes. Yeah.
Like one error is fatal, but actually in like with the current meta, unless you like whiff a flash kick, if you whiff a flash kick, you're dead if Dictator has charged. But
Right.
Guile hard counters Dictator, but you only pick
interesting.
Dictator. But you only pick Dictator if you're like my only chance of like it's the one chance thing. So yeah, you might get a chance to land a random scissor kick or get a knockdown and just start throwing all day.
Because he can scissor kick over Sonic Booms at the right timing in this one, which is
not as a practical thing though. It's like it just happens. You can't time or space it. In the most like recent tournaments, I guess like the last biggest tournament that happened in China where like players from Chile went and Korea.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I know Korea has a huge Champion Edition scene.
Yeah. The grand finals was actually Ryu Dictator. I think the Dictator won the last match, but there wasn't a Guile. This guy Laoyan from China, he uses Ryu. He's awesome with Ryu.
Gotcha.
And then Pakistan has a huge scene as well. They're on par. They're like same level. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I have a passion for CEs.
And now we all believe it too, because before we'd be like Pakistan, and then Tekken happened, and we're like, yeah, okay, yeah.
Now, I went there firsthand, and I saw and I played them, and I'm like, oh shit, yeah, you guys are. So it was funny. So it's my first time going to Japan. Just before I went for SBO, I played the Japanese, in Japan for the first time. I'm like, wow, this is the highest level Street Fighter I've ever played. And maybe like 3 months later I went to Pakistan and I played CE. I was like, this is the highest level Street Fighter I've ever played. Like them in CE is higher than Japan and ST. It was crazy. But sorry, going back, we definitely veered off track. But
so here's the thing, right? I mean, back then it was clearly that Dictator was the best, right?
For sure.
The meta had not developed enough. And so when hyper fighting came out, it was a breath of fresh air. It really, really was. And everybody was so happy because it was a lot more balanced. Now, this is an interesting situation because now, obviously, we've known about Pico Rivera, or we've known about World's Finest. And what was interesting is through mutual friends, someone that we knew actually had a Champion Edition cabinet in their house. Their parents just bought it for them. And they eventually upgraded it to hyper fighting. And so for one summer, like I would go to his place all the time and we would play hyper fighting all the time with him. So we just grinded hyper fighting with a bunch of the people, including Chan, who I talked about earlier. And in fact, in that very infamous GamePro magazine, the hyper fighting guide with the Tomo interview in the background, in the very back of the guide. If you look at the leaderboard, you'll see a name Roger Sahavo on there. He's the guy who owns the who owned the hyper fighting cabinet. There's an Eric Tetley on there. He's another guy who played with us all the time at Roger's house. And so it's like Jeff Schaefer has even been to Roger's house before to play there. I was never there when Schaefer was there, but Schaefer has actually been there before to play with them and everything like that. So while I wasn't competing, I was familiar with what high-level tournament competition was like. And hyper fighting was just, I mean, even to this day, it's still one of my favorite games because it's not actually balanced, but it's still pretty damn balanced. It
is.
And I will still live and die by the statement that I think it's the most fun Zangief has ever been. Just because Kick Lariat is the best. Oh my god. But I just know a lot of people were really, really happy with hyper fighting. Really happy that you know, it was a much more balanced version than Champion Edition was. And so, and the speed was the other thing, because obviously from Hyper Fighting to Super, the speed dropped back down, and it was really disappointing until Super Turbo. So, yeah, the Hyper Fighting still to this day is probably one of my favorite Street Fighters, if you count them all separately. Like, I say Super Turbo by default as the 2 representative, but if we counted every version as separate, then it would be like ST and then Hyper Fighting like right afterwards, or maybe even tied. I'm not even sure, because I have so many fond memories of Hyper Fighting.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of like revivals for games. Right now, actually, you know, there's a big Discord group for Hyper Fighting. You know, those guys are also trying to like collect the stories and, you know, get old school players back and hear from them. And I've said many times, it's definitely the most balanced Street Fighter. Yeah. One of the topics that's being discussed right now, you might have seen on Event Hubs, was about like, what's the most balanced Street Fighter game? And right now on the polls, it's like Ultra Street Fighter 4. I guess everyone forgot Elena was in that game. But yeah, I don't know why people don't realize that the older games are more balanced. They just, oh yeah, it's broken. Yeah.
Cool story is that Hyper Fighting was balanced by US players.
Right. That's the crazy part of it, too. And it's funny because I troll a lot of the Hyper Fighting people. I'm like, nah, CE's the GOAT. Like, I don't like Hyper Fighting. Like, I refuse to play it. But, you know, I'm always there to support the Hyper Fighting scene because of the passion that the players have. I'm not sure if you know Eggs and Bacon, but that's his name. He's always like putting in work for Hyper Fighting.
I also will just total aside, but I don't read Event Hubs, but I won't get into that. So
okay, all right, fair. Me neither. It was only brought up to my attention because Alex talked about it yesterday. He sent the link, so I'm like, all right, let's check it out. But yeah, James Goddard would be another good guy to get on here one day. You know, talking about balance, like Champion Edition must have been a hard game to about. Like, who would have thought? Oh, just speed it up. Just change this thing here, do this here, like. Well, now it's easy. Oh, make the wake up 4 frames. Like make the jab 4 instead of 3. You'll be more balanced. But back then, you know, how do you come up with that? You know what I mean?
We didn't even understand frames. Like, I couldn't tell you why Blanka neutral jump heavy punch was such a good air to air and kind of like as a reactionary anti-air. I didn't understand the technical reason behind it. It's because the move is like 1 frame. Right? It's like basically stupid. Like, back then there was no way for me to actually explain it, but you just knew it in your heart that it was so good, you know, as an air to air. And something I did kind of want to, I almost mentioned earlier on, but there have been those oral history articles that I think, I forget which site has been putting it. I think it's Kotaku or was it one? I forgot which one has been putting them out, but they did one for the original Street Fighter 2. And they actually did talk about how Japan's design philosophy was they wanted players to be able to react to everything. And that's why they didn't like it being faster. And so when Hyper Fighting came out and they sped it up because of the Korean chips that were making the Rainbow editions, they wanted to slow it back down because they didn't like the fact that like Honda or Blanka can charge at you and you can't uppercut it in time. And it was a difference in philosophy and mindset on how they were making the game, but eventually they realized that faster was better, and that's what happened with Super Turbo.
Again, US was ahead, but it's funny because it's a part of the Japanese culture, right? Like, it's very like disciplined. You know, that's their way of expressing. But I think US is like, clearly everyone's just having a lot of fun.
We like chaos.
Basically, it's a representation, I guess, of culture in a light way. But yeah, like that one patch, I guess you could say, from Goddard and the US team, you know, brought it to the point of the fighting games we have now. So I think, you know, just between CE and HF, there's not enough appreciation of like the work that was put into that for, like, you know, the longevity of games. Now, new challengers. So you said, you know, obviously things got slowed down. That's probably the least played Street Fighter. If you don't count Ultra Street Fighter 2, of course.
But I mean, it basically killed the scene, as far as I know. Like, Pico, I stopped hearing about Pico Rivera, like the Golfland place that I told you about that I had the very first tournament for. They had a 2-story arcade, and the upper story was always where they put all the super old games. Like you would find like really old games up there. And when we would go to Golfland, Hyper Fighting would still be on the bottom floor, and Super was on the upper floor.
Wow.
Because it just, nobody had any interest in it. It was like people didn't want to play it. And I think it really kind of killed a lot of the scene in Southern California. From my perspective, like for me, it absolutely just decimated the scene. It just took it out completely. I don't know, like if you talk to Watson or Tomo or those guys, how it went from there. I know Tomo quit around that time because he got a girlfriend, I think. So
yeah, so the story goes,
Yeah.
and then it's like the Ryu ending for him. He just like walked away into the sunset.
And you know, that's an indication again of how different it was, because if you played games back then, it was either games or girls, because there was no such thing as mixing the two of them. Like if you found a girl that could put up with video games, it was amazing at that time.
She's a keeper.
Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah, it's pretty unfortunate that, you know, we had to take a step back with new challengers, and clearly it showed just as far as I can tell, there's no new challengers, you know, revival scene.
Yeah.
You mentioned actually Coda a few times, and there's actually a revival for Coda. There was a tournament not too long ago, and I think the match arena was at $400 for it.
Oh dang, nice. Okay.
Yeah.
That game is broken. You want to talk about broken games? Oh man.
From what I've been told, it's like the ST of the versus, like the versus legacy games. I don't know if that's true.
Yeah. I mean, basically every time you get touched, you die. It's almost like that completely, because just the everything leads to a stun combo and the damage is so high. But you know, it's a scary game.
It looks nice. I was watching a lot of it, like, this is pretty hype.
It's also just graphically one of the most beautiful games that they
too.
made. Oh god, it's so pretty.
Yeah, the crossover games, like it was just so unique. Jumping from like Street Fighter to those versus titles was like, what the hell? All right, so now we're getting into finally Super Turbo, right?
Mm-hmm.
You picked Cammy as your first character, is that right?
No, actually, Cammy was not my first character. What happened was when Super first came out, I was playing a lot of Honda and Zangief, because Honda and Zangief were my mains in Hyper Fighting. Honda was my main in Street Fighter 2 because I was always kind of a low tier hero and I always wanted to represent the unused characters. And then Zangief was kind of that way in Hyper Fighting. So when Super came out and I had like the German suplex and all these things, like, this is so sick. So I liked him. And then when Super Turbo came out, they gave Honda a command throw. So he became Zangief. And so I was like, I'm gonna play this character for sure. And so I would play a lot of Honda. The problem with it is that when my brother and I played Honda, neither of us could beat the other person. And so we just basically stopped playing Honda because we considered him too cheap at the time. And then my low tier hero factor kicked in again. And then nobody played Cammy because she was pretty much garbage. And so I picked her up purely out of the low tier heroes thing because I was determined to make her work. And that just basically kind of propelled me into the reputation of being a Cammy player.
Yeah, it's actually pretty cool that, you know, you got to have that. And, you know, we all know that you shout out Cammy on the streams, like any game it is, you know, Cammy's always going to be a point of discussion. But I remember when you qualified for Tournament of Legends 1, you actually did say that you were happy to be able to, you know, one, like qualify, but two, also like represent the character. Actually, let me see if I have picture. Yeah, so you can see it over here. Okay. So this was from a program that NoHoHo made, where you kind of just ask like quick questions. So I don't know, is your favorite movie still The Princess Bride?
Yes, it is. It is actually.
All right, so all this stuff holds up. All right.
Yeah, you know what the fun? I've told the story before on a stream, but like the way that I qualified for that Tournament of Legends was the Super Turbo tournament at CEO, And Daigo had already been invited to the Tournament of Legends just by being Daigo, right?
Right, Japan invite, yeah.
Yeah, and so he was in grand finals. He sent Arturo to losers bracket. And so losers finals was going to be me versus Arturo Sanchez. And so Daigo looked at it, was like, oh, okay, saw those two playing, saw that we two were going to play, and he walked away. And then me and Arturo played, and, you know, the strategy of Dhalsim versus Cammy hadn't been quite as developed as it is now, because Dhalsim clearly beats Cammy in Super Turbo, but at that time it was still more of an even matchup. So I was able to beat Arturo, and then the person running the tournament was like, go tell Daigo to come and play his match against you. And I said, okay. So I ran over to Daigo and I was like, come on, you have to play your match. And he was like, okay. And then we both walked up to the cabinet, and he looked around like he was looking for Arturo. And I was like, no, you're playing me. And he looked at me and he pointed at me and he started like laughing. And I was like, what?
he's the villain.
I was like, really? And then he picked Boxer of all things, and then he just destroyed me. So, you know, I was like, thanks, Daigo. But since he had already qualified, I made it in. So there you go.
That's funny.
I still remember, he just looked at me and he just like kind of chuckled to himself, and I was like, wow, the disrespect from Daigo.
He's like, you, ha ha ha. Like,
yeah. Like, oh, this is free.
Oh, man.
Oh, man.
But yeah, you also have a pocket Ken, and it says over here, desperate times call for desperate measures, Claw. I don't think I've ever seen you pick Claw, but you definitely have a pretty solid Ken. We've seen that, so.
Yeah. I pick Claw sometimes when I need to kill like an O.Dot Sagat, something like that. There was one point in time during Wednesday night fights, you know, when Tanya and Eugene were really doing all, you know, El Trouble and Killer Miller were doing a lot of the Super Turbo stuff. You know, there was one season where, you know, I was playing with Cammy and everything like that, and I did pretty well in the season. And then the next season, one of the things I noticed is that nobody at Wednesday Night Fights played Claw, because I think everybody kind of knew he was cheap and, like, you know, there's no respect for Claw players. And I just basically was like, no, we all have to learn Claw. And so for that season, I played mostly Claw. And yeah, there's just a lot of fights that I would just get like free wins and stuff like that, because you could just tell that we didn't have the experience. And, you know, fortunately, some people did. And you know, it was not like I won for free or anything like that. But, you know, it was just kind of an indication. But, you know, point being is that I have a pseudo Claw. It's probably like at 70% of what Claw could be, but 70% Claw is still like top
very
tier.
Effective,
you know?
Yeah. It's super effective. It's like using electric on a water type.
Yeah, exactly.
It's gonna work. How would you describe your play style? You know, some people are, you know, tech heavy, some people are defensive, then there's like the methodical, you know, John Choi style, then there's RTSD, Valle style. Like, how would you describe your play style?
It's very heart-based, I think. You know, you've probably heard the discussion that Laugh from Korea kind of started with the heart, body, and the mind kind of style of plays, where like the mind is studying frames and knowing all this stuff, and, you know, the body is I'm an execution junkie, and heart is like I just make these decisions because it feels like the right thing to do.
Yeah,
you know,
no, that's all like. Laugh was kind of ahead of the game too, I must say. Yeah. And
that's kind of how I see myself. I like to be active. I like pressing buttons. I like I just like constantly doing something, and Cammy kind of gives me that. And, you know, interestingly enough, like I said, I started with Zangief and Honda, and, you know, I loved Honda at first in Super Turbo until I became a Cammy player, but I liked him because of the command grab. And even to this day, I've realized one of the reasons why I think I actually like Cammy so much in Super Turbo is because I played her like a grappler, because she was a grappler with the hooligan throw, right? Hooligan throw is almost the same as walk-up SPD. You know, landing a hooligan throw and landing walk-up SPD gives me the same kind of joy, and also it means that I've been playing the footsies correctly. You know, I've gotten them scared enough to hit a button for just that brief second of time that I can sneak this in and get them. And you know, I love that. I love that methodical play. I love the training of players to stop doing things or to make them think that this is happening. And, you know, in hyper fighting, one of my favorite matchups is Zangief versus Guile, which is a terrible matchup. But I enjoy it so much because of the kind of mind game that it presents, you know, and it's really not about like the frames and stuff like that. It's really just about reading the right time to move forward and go for the SBD, or if you think he's hair trigger on the crouching medium kick to stop you from the walk up SBD, that's when you use the kick lariat, and you know, or you try to trade with the slow roundhouse versus his crouching medium kick.
So layers on layers, basically.
Yeah, oh, it's so great. And so that's kind of the style of play that I really like. And it's kind of reason why I feel like I'm so bad at games like Street Fighter V, because, you know, Street Fighter V is about being untrainable. Like that is the nature of that game.
Yeah, it's hard to, I mean, obviously, like many people that even play the game, but I think a lot of people that are into the older games say like, no, I can't do Street Fighter V. I don't like it. But obviously the players that are, you know, winning or, you know, getting high placements consistently, they're talented Street Fighter players. Yeah. They're great. They know what they're doing. They understand what's going on. I think it's just hard for us to get into that.
Yeah.
And they make it sound simple. It's like, oh yeah, you know, it's just your plus here, your minus there. This is always safe. This isn't. But for me, it's kind of easier to get into the older games because it's more intuitive. It's more. Right. It's like the analogy that you gave with Tetris, where you can just give someone the game and it'll make sense to them without you having to explain it. In Street Fighter 2, you can kind of do the same thing. The learning is different.
This goes right into my theory. I've been really on this kick for the past year. I know some people are probably really sick of hearing me talk about it, but you know, that heart, body, and mind thing, I really am starting to classify games into different categories. Street Fighter V is a mind game. Super Turbo is a heart game.
Yes.
The reason why we don't see a lot of old school players having the same kind of success in Street Fighter V, because most old fighting games were heart games, and they drew out the heart players. You know, and Street Fighter 4 was really where we started seeing the shift when we went from Daigo winning Evo to Infiltration to Cien. And then all of a sudden, like, Infiltration and Cien are very scientific kind of players. Infiltration has the perfect balance between heart and science, which is why he's such a good player. But then Cien is like a massive scientist. And we saw that shift. And that's why a lot of the old school players can't succeed in Street Fighter V. Daigo even talked about it as well on his own stream, talking about how Nuki can't play Street Fighter V because he doesn't want to study anything. You know,
it's funny too, because in Street Fighter 4 top 8, I think it was a top 8 match at Evo. Maybe it was the one just before Ultra. Maybe it was Super. Daigo was fighting Tokido, and at the very end, Daigo just threw out a fierce DP and Tokido blocked and punished whatever. Yeah. And I remember like reading a post tournament interview, and Daigo said I threw that DP out with my heart. I felt like it was in a hit, and even though it didn't and I lost, like I have no regrets. Like he did what he wanted to do. And yeah, that quality you'll still really only like you still kind of only really see that with Daigo in Street Fighter 4 and 5, like that match against Gamer B where he just threw out like 6. You know, I agree with you like completely about the heart, and you know, bringing it back to like ST players. You know, players ask me a lot like, why is Japan so much better? And it's a lot of reasons actually. And a good chunk of it is experience, but I said they play without thinking. And I was like, what do you mean? That doesn't make sense. Like, there's so much to think about. I'm like, that's the problem. Because when you think in these older games, you already like lost time. Yeah. So now you might be too slow on the uppercut, or you missed the whiff punish, or you know, you hesitated on the safe jump and you jump late and now you got uppercut or whatever. So when I went to Japan, after explaining to them, because like I already knew this, I was like, all right, just to confirm it for you, I'm randomly gonna ask players there. So I'm like, hey, Kusumondo, like, do you think when you play? He goes, what? I'm like, you know, do you think about stuff? He goes, no, like there's nothing to think about.
Yeah,
you just play. You know, ask Yaya, ask, you know, Murasaki, ask all these players, like, explain. And then I had to explain like, oh, well, Americans, like when we get into it, they're like, no, we don't do any of that. It's like you just get in the game and you just like execute.
Yeah,
because they've played the matchups a million times.
I'm so glad you talk about that, because Daigo says that. He says older games are about speed of decisions. And he's like, in modern games, it's about knowing all the options in every single, like all this stuff. And, I keep saying, like, people tell me all the time, oh, well, if Super Turbo came out today, we would be studying the frame data. And I was like, no, frame data doesn't matter. Like, it's like, okay, maybe there's certain situations where, like, yes, it's a confirmation. But whenever we got those guides that had the frame data, like the Yoga Hyperbook, it was always like, neat, that confirms what I believe. And then you never thought about it again.
Or we would look at the Yoga Hyperbook and be like, that can't be right, and then it gets proven that the Yoga Hyperbook actually had errors or something like that. So
exactly,
yeah. So it's not just it's really confirmation of your own belief.
Yeah,
but it makes for good discussions. And just to give a quick shout out to Born to SPD. This guy went into the code for Super Turbo. As you know, he did New Legacy. I know you said that the most fun Zangief is from Hyper Fighting. I challenge you to try Old Geef and New Legacy. He's basically HF Geef, but in ST world, and it's fun. Because he has negative edge SPD now, but anyhow.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I mean, my humble request, if you can try him out. But yeah, like this guy went into the code and, he's answering all these questions and like confirming, like theories and stuff that we've had. And even recently, I'm not sure if you've been keeping up with Alpha 2, but Saber, unlocked some stuff about, the damage buff that you get around to, right? Which like we knew about this, right? Like I know, and it hasn't been proven yet, but I know that there's a round 2 RNG, the way the stun values work and the way the damage works. I just can't like prove it, but maybe with Born to SPD's help can.
You just feel it in your heart, Yeah.
It's like another example is like if you combo someone, or let's say like I'm in a tournament, someone does a combo that normally stun and it doesn't. At the end of the match, like, man, I would have won if that combo stunned. I'd be like, oh, it's because you didn't believe it, and I knew that it wouldn't have stunned. Like it's just a thing. You can't explain it. You can't explain it, but it's a feeling. You're like, I knew it wasn't gonna stun. Like I knew I could still come back and win it. That's like the magic of Super Turbo, in particular.
And that's why, like, talking about that heart factor again, it's such a different kind of game. And that's the beautiful part of it, right? Like, really for me, the reason why I'm so in on this theory and this kind of philosophy with different kinds of game now is because ever since I've accepted that, different fighting games are for different kinds of players, or they favor different kinds of players, it's really made me understand why I have trouble with some games and why I enjoy certain other games. Like, you've talked about things that I'm famous for. Well, people obviously know about my trials and tribulations with Tekken.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, we know all about that.
Yeah, everybody knows about that. And it was hard for me to get into that game. But again, that game is very similar to Street Fighter V. It's a very, like, oh, if Mishimas like to do this, you have to sidestep only left at this certain timing. This is minus this, I gotta attack this, you gotta watch out for this as a low. And then I learned Soul Calibur, and Soul Calibur is more of a heart game, and that game makes so much more sense to me. And, we could just be like, oh, whatever, James, you're making it up because you just like one game more than the other. But if you actually look at the base of players, they don't cross over. And you would imagine that for the two Bandai Namco games that you would have the Tekken community and the Soul Calibur community kind of like intermeshed. And there's not a lot of them. Most people who play Tekken say they can't play Soul Calibur. Most people who play Soul Calibur say they can't really play Tekken. And why is that? It's because the way that you're supposed to learn the game is very different. And that to me is what's so brilliant about what Daigo has done, because he is a heart player. And when Street Fighter V started, he wasn't very good. And he actually figured it out, like, wait, I'm not playing this game with the right mindset. Street Fighter V is a completely different game. And he turned himself into a mind player. Like, how do you even do that? Like,
he definitely had the metamorphosis. And I think switching to Guile was kind of like the best thing for him. I know people are like, go back to Ryu, but like the way he thinks about Guile, sometimes I'll watch a stream and I'll be like, all right, like, He tries to do the heart thing though by going deeper into what's every possible way of using like, you know, like that toward that roundhouse kick. I forget what it's called. The one where you can like combo flash kick after.
Oh, like the upside down kick, you mean?
The other one, the down toward roundhouse.
Oh, that thing, the launcher thing. Yeah.
So, like, what is every single like application for this move?
Right.
And, yeah, he completely changed his way of thinking, like you said, and you know he's making it work with the scout.
It's so impressive what he's done, and like to me, it's just an indication of how good of a player he really is. Just that he was able to kind of make that metamorphosis. I mean, I also tell the story of Justin as well. Like Justin is a heart player as well, because like I said, the old games just brought out the heart players, and he's definitely more of a heart player. And it wasn't until he found Manat that he started finding success, because Manat, the way he played Manat was with his heart. Like he hit more people with Manat standing fierce than anybody else that I know, but that's because he's avoiding all of the frame data in Street Fighter V. By playing the neutral game of standing strong, standing fierce, and all that stuff like that, he avoids the frame data, he avoids the mind part of the game, and he plays purely the heart game. And as soon as he learned Manat, he got top 8 at Capcom Cup, right? Like there's no shock to me about that. So I can't see how you couldn't believe that there is this philosophy of the different games, you know, working for different mindsets. And like I said, it's brought me a lot of comfort on why I suck so bad at Street Fighter V, you know, and Tekken for that matter. So like it makes me feel a little better about myself. Maybe that's why I believe it so much, because it makes me feel better about myself.
No, I'm 100% with you, and it's hard to be able to juggle all those games, and I think that there's a bit of proof for it. But what I actually wanted to do now is watch one of your matches here. So this is you versus Spence.
Oh dang!
E5.
What? Oh dang! This is a long time ago. Okay.
Yeah, E5 okay. ST. And the reason why I picked this match is, well, obviously it's high tier versus low tier. Maybe at the time the match wasn't fully fleshed out, but you did in this match what I want to call like the James Chen special.
Okay.
Let's go ahead and watch it.
At this point in time, I still think people believe that Cammy beat Dhalsim at this point in time.
Look at these block strings. Yeah, are you amazed? Are you amazed at yourself? Look at these uppercuts.
Like no, just the sweep into the spin knuckle. That's the Milo D. Cooper that I don't even do that much anymore these days.
Yeah, jump medium punch and you was a good jump in.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay. Let's go, James.
Let's go.
Oh man.
Up there it goes, and then. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that not the James Chen special? Come on.
Yeah.
That is right.
It's funny because I always do meaty crouching medium punch against Dhalsim, and one time I was doing that so much while I was at Vi's house, and Vi's like, "Why do you keep doing that?" Because I was like, "It's good. It's a meaty. He has to block it low because for some reason it hits Dhalsim low sometimes, and like, you know, I was just like, and it's meaty, and like if I hit him, he dies, and and he's like, yeah, but if you do it every time, the opponent's going to get used to it and he's going to feel comfortable in the situation. He's like, you have to mix it up. He's like, do a different media. I'm like, but it's not as optimal. He's like, doesn't matter. And like, that completely changed my brain. I was like, whoa, this is crazy.
It's funny because that right there, that sequence, the meaty, low, strong is in confirming to that three-piece is always what I consider like, oh yeah, that's the James Chen special. So if anyone lands that combo, like if Soundscope does it, James Chen special. So it's nice. So funny that Valle told you not to do it, but it's like, it's kind of what you were known for. It's so cool.
Awesome. Hey, I'm glad. No, I mean, like one of the things I also want to mention too was, you know, one of my most proud moments of Super Turbo in my career wasn't even a win. It was the year that Jayan, however you supposed to pronounce his name, Jayan, came to EVO. The 1 year he came to EVO, I had to play him very early in the tournament. And you know how old school tournaments are. You don't play your main character right away. You kind of cheese around with your secondary. He was playing Ryu at the start of the tournament, and I fought him first game, and I beat his Ryu. And then he came back with Dalsum, and this was still when I thought Cammy beat Dalsum. So I was like, I got this. I can send Jian to losers. And then he knew more than I did in the matchup. It was still close, but he beat me. And then he eventually went on to win the tournament. They interviewed him in Japan afterwards, and they were like, and the lady was like, "Oh, how did you do? You know, what did you think?" And it was like, it wasn't that hard. Like, I everybody was pretty easy to beat. Like, I didn't have to struggle too much. Blah blah blah. And she was like, "Wasn't there anybody who like surprised you or gave you trouble?" And he was like, now that I think about it, there was this one Cammy player who like almost beat me, you know, like I was like, yes,
got him.
I was like, vindication, let's go. So that's a proud moment for me.
Yeah, Jian, I mean, he definitely did a lot for the Super Turbo scene, you know, running tournaments, also doing commentary.
Yeah.
At one point, he was definitely like one of the top dogs in the world. Every now and then he'll still play, but yeah, that's pretty cool. That's some good recognition right there. Let's bring it. Let's get another match pulled up. This is a more recent one actually, and this was at Spring Series in Texas.
Yeah. Okay.
So just to preface this was to qualify for top 24. And this was loser side. You had already played Cammy, which is kind of a maybe Dictator's only favorable match in the game between like that and Usagat. So then you switch over to your secondary Ken. Let's go ahead and watch it. It's game 5. We already saw earlier in this set you did land a short super, by the way. It's not going to be on this match, but yeah, you did hit that. So
everybody wants to land that, man. There's one of my favorite combos right there. The short Kara into the quarter circle forward plus kick. I remember I did that. Everybody watching was like, whoa, because like you don't see it that often.
Now E to the NG, rep in New York, really strong Dictator player.
Yeah.
Kind of in the more recent years, started playing, and he's also an all-around great fighting game player too. Actually, plays everything.
Yeah, to the competition at this tournament was ridiculous, dude. It was terrifying. I was surprised I did as well as I did. Come on, chip him, James. What are you doing? There you go. Okay.
But I like the reason why I selected this match to watch with you is this felt like to me like the new school versus OG like never give up mentality.
Right.
Because you went all in with this Ken. You're like, I'm gonna have to hold it down with my sub. You did a lot of clutch stuff, like still not missing a beat with the the jump jab Tatsu stuff.
Yeah.
Hitting the uppercuts.
Oh man. Yeah, this is a stressful fight, but I remember too, because when I was playing this, like I was so nervous. Oh my gosh, I can't even tell you how nervous I was when I was playing this. The double uppercut, of course.
Yeah, the mini repa, the classic.
Yep.
Oh, good block.
All right. I did it! I can't believe I did it. I just did the uppercut again.
You played with your heart.
Yeah. Exactly.
That's how you gotta do it. You felt it.
Exactly.
You felt it.
Oh
so,
man.
That's the way that it goes, but I remember just watching it. I wasn't doing commentary on that one. I think it was Eugene and Boat Guy from Texas.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And I just remember watching it. Deep down, I was like, yes, it's my Dictator brother. I want E to the NG to win, but I was like, I know somehow James didn't pull through. Like I just knew.
Really?
I knew you were gonna win it.
Oh man.
And it was so crazy because E to the NG, like I said, he's an awesome player. Not just SC, but fighting games in general. He's really good. But somehow it just felt like your OG nature was gonna pull through. So I was real excited for that match.
Oh, thank you. You had more confidence in me than I did.
Hey man, you played it out. You got the short super. You got your short Kara combo. You got the DPs when it mattered. Like it just shows. But yeah, that was some good stuff. Now we touched on like playing with heart and mind. And the topic that I want to bring up is about multi-game players.
Yeah.
So this next match that I have here was actually at Caesar's Meetings. And this set went the distance, but we'll play one of the matches.
Yeah.
And this is Tokido when maybe Damdai was the only one beating him when he would visit the U.S. And Tokido was a threat because he was a multi-game player. So let's go ahead and watch this, and then we can kind of talk about like multi-game versus one game. So.
Yeah, he went up. It was 3 out of 5 or 4 out of 7. I can't remember what it was, but I think he went up like 3-0 or 2-0, and then I started winning and started making the comeback against him. I remember. And, you know, at this time, too, I actually feel like Cammy does better against Vega than most people do. I don't think this fight is that bad. Weirdly enough.
Until you get knocked down. But yeah, Cammy definitely has setups and can set up TOD with like the air reset with like stand medium punch. And
also just her crouching medium kick can stop the slide. It can stop the rolling crystal flash. It can stop crouching strong. So it's just an annoying button for Vegas to have to deal with.
Oh!
Ooh, the tick throw, let's go!
This was a high rollers tournament. I think it was $50 entry, right? Or something like that?
Something like that, yeah. There was another match at this tournament. It was the first time I had ever played Damdai, and I actually sent him to losers in this tournament. And that was that was another, and I did it with Ken again as well, and everybody was like, "We didn't know you played Ken."
You know what? That's Damdai. I'm coming for you now. Well, I'll explain why. Oh, there goes that. You just went for the point blank DP. Playing with your heart.
Yep. Fake with the low strong, and then just do it. Yeah.
You try to follow Alex's advice.
Yeah, this was definitely after I talked to Alex about that, so... God, I was so mad. I was like, come on, where's my super? Where's my super? I'll also be fair, too, and say that's the last time I've ever beat Damdai. Damdai has just basically destroyed me since then, because Damdai is Damdai, so...
Yeah, he plays his own style. Oh, there goes the mix-ups.
Yep. The hooligan, there's the grappler Cammy right there. Although there was...
Nice.
Ooh, nice! Come on, you're not gonna fail your chip this time, right, James?
Uh-oh.
Oh god! I'm so scared. Okay.
I stuck it out.
And that's what I mean. That crouching medium kick can actually fight that match. But there was one time Damdai showed up to Don's Arcade and played a little exhibition over there. And then after the tournament was done, which he won, there was the Damdai Gauntlet where everyone lined up to fight against him. And I came the closest to beating him, and I did hit him with Jump Fierce and a heavy drill, and it didn't stun him. And I can't remember if we were playing on the Japanese or the English version, but Damdai afterwards said, "You would have won if we were playing on the other one because the other one tends to have a higher stun." And I was like,
Japan.
Really? Oh, okay, yeah.
Japan version stuns.
Yeah, he said, that's what he told me. He's like, if it was Japan, you would have beat me. He's like, because it would have stunned a lot more often. I was like, whoa, I didn't know.
Yeah, that's why playing Dictator on the like world board or US board is kind of like a nerf because his TODs don't always stun.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's funny. Another funny match story that I have was I play, at EVO 2002, there was the Black Bracket of Death that I'm sure you've heard all about, where like for some reason every great player was in that bracket. Like there was all these different brackets, and the Black Bracket of Death had like everybody in it, and I had to fight Mike Watson in that bracket. And round 1 fight, I jumped, he Hadouken, I did Fierce Drill stun, Fierce Drill dead. And like everybody watching was like, oh my God. But you could tell after that, Watson was like, this mofo is not touching me ever again. And then he just destroyed me, dude. He smoked me. He was so mad that I did that to him with like a 91 second left perfect. And then I just didn't touch him again. Like he just smoked me afterwards.
So at one point you were also a speedrunner, I guess. But now, since you brought up EVO 2002, I did pull a lot of photos from your Flickr page. Mm-hmm. And for anyone who wasn't aware, because I actually didn't know this until you brought it up. You're like, oh yeah, since 2002 I've been documenting stuff. Mm-hmm. This is a gold mine. Like there's pictures of any player, you name it, they're there from like that era.
Right.
Just like pretty much skinnier, I guess.
Don't call us out like that, man.
I mean, I'm just saying they were younger. Sorry. But this belt, what were these headbands?
They're like the gi bands, I think. The gi tie things that you put around your waist. Yeah. And yeah, those things were so sick, dude. Oh, those things are so cool. And Jason Cole was the one who won that belt up there.
Yeah, look at his close up over here, and then he was able to defeat. Was it Nuki?
Nuki, in a run back, actually. He was a 2-time champion. He had beaten Nuki at B5, I believe, and then he fought Nuki in this tournament and beat him again. And it was really, I still remember the grand finals because it was a huge indication of how, that's Jason Nelson next to Jason Cole, by the way, over there. The blurry dude over there.
Shout out to the Jasons, yeah.
Yeah, and it was just an indication of how much of a counter pick game it was. It was always whoever won the first game won the set, basically.
Oh man, this is so funny to me, dude. But you know, because Nohoho, rest in peace. So when Noho and I used to go to Chinatown Ferry play, after playing we'd like talk. He said, "You know this thing in the West Coast?" Like what? He said, "Whoever wins the first game wins the set." What do you mean? He goes, "Well, it'll start like Ryu versus Chun-Li. The Ryu wins, the guy will switch to Zangief. The Zangief beats the Ryu, then the Ryu will switch to Ultigat. The Ultigat beats the, Zangief, then the Zangief switch to Chun." It's like,
right, yeah.
So pretty much like it was the way that he would say to me, like I would always crack up. But he said, "Yeah, like if you win the first game on West Coast, you'll win the set."
Yeah, well, dude, that's so funny that I said the exact same thing because that's exactly what happened. It was, I think it was Old Sagat versus Chun, and then he would win with Old Sagat. Nuki switched to someone else and beat the Sagat. Then he would switch to Balrog and then switch back. Like it was like that or something. I forgot what the exact order was, but yeah, Jason Cole won the first game, and so it was then just back and forth in matches, and then Jason Cole eventually defeated Nuki. So.
Yeah, the stage looks dope.
Yeah, that was the first EVO. That's at UCLA, by the way. That was the first time we had, a big venue like that. That was largely because of me, because above the arcade was this giant ballroom that I suggested that we rent out for EVO because we couldn't fit it in the arcade anymore. Everything worked out, and then we had the event here. Turned out not to be the best thing. There was a lot of drama, a lot of bad stuff happened, and because it was a college campus, it had to close early, so they forced, we had to force MVC2 into one game at the end and all this stupid stuff, and I was like so proud to get it at UCLA, and then at the same time I'm really sad because a lot of drama and dumb shit, like equipment got stolen and shit like that.
Come on, man.
The security guard that UCLA hired didn't do his job, and so a projector got stolen, and then they got mad at the cannons had to or where's our money for our projector? That it was like a few $1,000s for that. It was a long story anyway. So I always felt bad about that. Ugh. I always felt terrible.
Yeah, speaking of equipment, I think this was like one of the EVO East. I had to pull this photo, man. Tell me about this.
This is one of my favorite stories. I can tell the long version or I can tell the short version here.
Hey, man, up to you.
So basically what happened was we used to do EVO West and EVO East, right? That was when we got the partnership with Toyota, and that was through Peter Kang, the guy who executive produced the Bang the Machine, right? Because he was part of an advertisement group, but he loved fighting games, so he hooked us up with Toyota and stuff. So they were like, oh, well, this will work for the Toyota Yaris, brand new cars. So we got this dealership with them. And so we had EVO East in Stamford, Connecticut. And one of the things that had to happen was we had that Street Fighter car. We had the Yaris painted with like the EVO logo and stuff like that on it. And this guy, God, what was his name? Was his name like Derek or Eugene or something like that? He had to drive that Yaris from Southern California to New York, and he did it in this truck, right? So that was what he had to do. Well, since we had never run a tournament on the East Coast, Seth Killian contacted a team and was like, hey, we need to rent a bunch of TVs. And then when the weekend came around, the guys were like, hey, sorry, the TVs that you guys rented were not available. But because we messed up, we're going to upgrade you to a bunch of flat screens for free. And we were like, oh shit. And sure enough, we go there and they told me, hey, James, you're the combo guy. See if these monitors have lag. Don't ask the combo guy to test lag because I have muscle memory. So I tested it and I was like, this seems fine. Then everybody showed up to the event and were like, these monitors are lagging horribly. This was like the midnight, this was like at 11 p.m. before the next day of the tournament starting. And so people were like, well, this tournament's dumb. It's ruined, you know, F this tournament kind of thing. And like people were posting on SRK, like, don't come to this event, da 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 da. It's like messed up. And so the Canons were like, well, what do we do? Well, they started calling every 24-hour Walmart they could find within the area. And the closest one we found was 50 miles away. And they had a bunch of CRTs that you see on the picture here. And so the guy, Eugene or whatever his name was, who drove the truck was like, yo, I will take my truck and help you guys pick up the TVs. And we were like, yo, really? And so me, Seth, Tom Cannon go in one car, and Tony Cannon and the other guy, might have been Gerald. I can't remember the name. I'm sorry. I'll just call him a truck driver, Toyota guy. I feel so bad. I can't remember that.
Sorry,
but, like,
Toyota guy.
Yeah, they were in the other truck driving down. And of course, this was before cell phones, so we didn't have Google Maps and shit like that. And we get a call after we've been driving for 50 miles. And Tony's like, hey, by the way, we're lost. We can't find the Walmart. We're like, what? And Tony's like, just kidding. It's right around the corner. And we're like, don't do that, okay? So we get there, and you've probably seen some of the other pictures, but literally Tom Cannon like points at the stand. He's like, you have this TV in stock? And they're like, yes, we want 20 of them, or however many he ordered. And so they're like, what the hell? And so we literally bought all these TVs, and we put them in this truck here, as you see. And this is like, by now it's like 2 a.m., 3 a.m., right? And so we're just like all dead and basically exhausted and tired at this point. And so we start driving back, and partway through the drive, Tony Cannon calls us on the phone. He's like, hey guys. And we're like, uh-huh. He's like, yeah, Toyota guy's clutch has broken and it's literally swinging by a wire. And we're like, shut up, Tony. Like, stop it. Haha, very funny. He's like, no, I'm dead serious.
Oh, shit.
And we're like, what? He's like, he's stuck in second gear. And there is like a toll place that's for trucks to stop at, that they have to stop at to pay for stuff to get through and everything. So we sped on ahead in our car, in our rented car, get to the thing, and we're like, there's a truck that's gonna be barreling through here. Their clutch is broken. They can't stop. We need them to keep going. Here's the money for the truck. Thank you. And we drove off, and somehow they let the truck bust through and didn't try to stop it for drugs or something, or like, you know, like teenage girls in the truck, you know, like being sold to slavery or whatever. Like they let it go. But the crazy part is getting off the freeway also had a hairpin turn that Toyota guy had to do in second gear, and he did it.
Combo videos.
Yeah, seriously. And we eventually pulled the truck up to the hotel, parked it there, and then Chris Lee and the rest of the guys from the DC area just showed up because they drove from there and traffic was terrible and they just arrived. And even though they had been driving for over 6 hours, like himself, Mike Creaky, David Wright, even though they had been driving for 6 hours, you know, Chris Lee has always helped out with Evo and stuff. He's always been one of the main guys helping out with Evo. He saw us unpacking these trucks, and he looked at Mike Creaky and David Wright and was like, let's go to work, boys. And literally all of us carried all of these TVs into the ballroom, and sure enough, everyone showed up the next morning with a bunch of non-lagged CRTs at the tournament. And that's
saved the day.
Yeah,
that's the story.
and you know, that's one of the reasons why I've been such a big believer in Evo and especially the Canons. You know, obviously with the stuff that's happened with Mr. Wizard, you know, it's very disappointing to find out about that. But you know, the Canons have always, you know, to me, they're the spirit behind Evo, and that's why I still support them today. You know, I'll support Evo going forward as much as I can because I know the Canons are still involved, and this is the kind of lengths the Canons will go to make sure a tournament runs well, you know.
Man, that's a freaking awesome story. Like, people don't realize the work that goes to these tournaments. Like even me, I was only like a competitor, right? So I'll just go to a tournament, TVs are already set up, stream equipment or whatever it is. Like everything's already set up. But now with, quarantine, just being at home and trying to set up a stream and doing commentary, getting people together, I'm like, this is a lot of work. But you're out here lugging TVs on a truck, like you're in a scene from Speed or something. Like that's some amazing stuff, man.
Yeah.
I do have a couple more photos from like various Evos that I pulled from your Flickr. But again, like I would recommend, if you guys haven't, definitely check this out. It's a gold mine. So here's a name that you mentioned earlier.
It's just flickr.com/jchenzor. Easy to find. Oh my God, who was that young kid on the right and the left, actually?
Yeah, tell me about this guy here.
Justin Wong. I think that was the first time I'd met Justin at one of these events and stuff. And it's funny because I knew him as the MVC2 guy, and he was the enemy, and he was loud and boisterous, and he was a cocky guy, and I was like, oh, I'll take a picture with him because he's the champion here and everything, but he's obviously our enemy, in-game enemy kind of thing. And it was funny because when Justin actually moved to the West Coast, he moved in with me. Actually, he moved into my home because I had an extra room to rent. And I didn't know. I was trying to use it as like a mini gathering for arcade to play Street Fighter 4. And then I think it was Gutex actually told me that Justin was moving. He's like, you should talk to him. He's looking for a place to stay. I was like, what the hell? So I was like, oh, I guess I'll ask Justin, but he's that cocky, brash kid from New York and stuff. And, well, we'll see how it goes because, it would be cool to help him out and, whatever. And, gosh, I'll tell you, man, when he moved in with his then girlfriend and their dog. And I will tell you right now, Justin is like the kindest, most introverted, like seriously wonderful hearted person that I met. He was nothing like that MVC2 bravado persona. And I even talked to him about that, and he was like, yo, if you don't talk that way in MVC2, you will be swallowed alive.
Yo, you sound just like him. Yo, you gotta start with the yo.
Yeah, exactly. And so, it turned out that, like I said, he was just this wonderful kid. And I think he also was really happy too, because I never told anybody that he lived with me. I wasn't like, dude, Justin lives with me. Yeah. Dude, you should check it out. Come over. I never did that. And I think he appreciated that a lot. I just respected his privacy and everything like that. And like I said, we actually became pretty good friends at that time. I tried to teach him how to drive before he went on the reality show. Obviously, I failed because he didn't do very well on the reality show. But yeah, no, honestly, like Justin Wong, where I see he's at right now, how successful he is. He's married. He has a beautiful 2-year-old daughter now and everything like that. Like seriously, like I cannot be more happy and proud for someone than seeing Justin where he's at right now. Like I'm so happy for him. He's I know a lot of people. Yeah, I know a lot of people still think he's that cocky kid and they don't like him, that they hate the Justin and Friends and stuff, but I tell you, man, like you get to know him and you realize what a good heart this person has, and he really is, one of my favorite. A lot of my favorite people come from New York. I'm not saying that just because I'm talking to you, okay? But like Yipes, L.I. Joe, Justin, these guys are all like just wonderful people, and Justin really is just absolutely. I'm so happy for him. So yeah, and there he is when he's like probably 18 or 19 or something like that. Probably 18.
Yeah, I'm not sure
something.
what year I pulled this from.
I mean, I know I probably look like I'm 16, but I'm like 20 something, like mid 20s already, dude.
Nah, dude, you guys look the same age, honestly. You look like kids.
Yeah.
I'm so serious.
Oh man.
All right, let's take a look at this one. I remember this here.
Oh gosh. The player on the right. Who is the player on the right?
My right or the screen? Or
the screen's right. The screen's right.
Yeah. Kusamundo.
That is Kusamundo. Yeah, okay. Dang, he looks a lot younger too.
Yeah, you know, I saw him recently, and when I looked at this picture, I'm like, dang, dude. Like,
yeah.
I mean, not to say, like, obviously he still looks great, but it's, when you look at old pictures, it's such a blast from the past, because I feel like just yesterday, you know, I saw them, and I remember everyone, you know, looking younger from, you know, when I first saw them. Not to say, sorry, it sounds really bad how I'm phrasing it right now. And
no, dude, trust me, I'm an old man. I'm right there with you. I mean, yeah, this was one of the first time that Japan actually came to the U.S. to play, you know, against us at Evo in Super Turbo, and Kusamundo was favored to be one of the players to win, and he actually ended up losing to Vi and John Choi.
That's
because
right.
They both played O.Shotos to beat him up, because we all know how crappy that fight is. So they actually both did manage to beat Kusamundo, and this was the match right there. But I mean, one of the things that you can tell right here, what's crazy about this, what a lot of people don't realize, is this was before joysticks were prevalent. And this is before we learned how to play with joysticks on our laps. Like, I played on the floor like you see John Choi does all the time right now, because one of the things you don't realize growing up as an arcade player is you throw your weight into your motion. When I do DPs on arcade cabinets, there is no kindness to this cabinet, right? It is like you are just like bam, bam, and hitting the buttons as hard as you can. And it gives you the speed, it gives you the accuracy and stuff. And then when you play on your lap, when you do that, you literally throw the joystick off your lap. You have to play differently. So we learned to play on the floor, because the joystick on the floor had less give. Well, during Street Fighter 4, for the qualifier for one of Vi's little SoCal versus SoCal tournaments, it took place in the parking overhang outdoors of somebody's apartment, and the ground had car oil all over it. So I couldn't play on the ground. So I had to play on a chair, and I lost because I couldn't play well. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to learn to play in a chair on my lap. But Japan was not used to playing on consoles at all.
Right. This is I think a pretty big discussion too, because I'm not sure if this was like the Dreamcast version or the PS2 version, but I know that it was harder for Kusamundo to do some of his tricks, and it's also funny because he's like playing on a box. All the Japanese players use this box and put the stick on the box.
Yeah, it's one of the boxes to the CRTs. And we had to give them these boxes to play on, because that's how different it was for them. They couldn't get used to playing on their laps, and it was such a big deal. It was, you know, this whole thing has... People don't know the history of it. Like at 2002, you know, between Nuki and Jason Cole and stuff, you guys probably, you probably know about the Cigar Bob cabinets, because I think Damdai has one, right? Well, we used one of his cabinets for the tournament, because you could unplug the panel and switch it from the, you know, back tops and the convex buttons to the concave buttons to the octo gates to the convex. So we had to keep doing that to help the Japanese players in Super Turbo. We had arcade cabinets that we could switch the head-to-head between Japanese and American sticks and stuff. There was a lot of stuff that we had to do to facilitate these tournaments back in the day, and it was a headache. Even when MOS sticks were a little more popular, everybody loved Justin's MOS stick. Yipes, Sanford, everybody liked his MOS stick. So at a tournament for MVC2, towards the end of the tournament, the scenario of, hey, Yipes, you need to go play. And he's like, oh, I can't. I need to borrow Justin's stick, and he's playing right now. And like, this was happening everywhere, and it held up tournaments constantly. Like, you would go up to Justin and you'd be like, your turn to play. He's like, I can't, Sanford's using my stick. You know, it's like
so funny.
The whole thing of joysticks and stuff, which is what the TE stick did for the scene, getting everybody used to square gates and convex buttons, was probably one of the most underrated, amazing things that happened to our scene. Because now everybody uses the same kind of joystick, And like, if I don't have my joystick, I can play on like 90 other people's joysticks, no problem.
Yeah, it was definitely revolutionary to have, you know, the ball top and like you said, the convex buttons.
Yeah.
There would be different joysticks that had a slightly different button layout. Like even if you look here, I think the Tekken stick versus the A-Trap 2 or whichever version of the A-Trap, like the button layout's slightly different, right? So even then, like there was that option too. But yeah, you were still able to like pick up someone else's stick and play, and that probably happened for a lot until now. Everyone has like 1 to 4 joysticks in their home at least.
And it's so nice now. It's so good. And then shout outs to Blessed Undamned, making it so that we could plug in our sticks into a Super Turbo board.
Yeah, that's
man.
And then also Tournament of Legends 1, the setup that we had there next to the head-to-head, you were able to plug in your own joystick. So I think some people were playing on pad, and
that's right.
So that was also like kind of a unique feature. But how was that like the Dreamcast versions of Super Turbo received?
It was the best version that we had at the time, for sure, because at least a lot of the things in there could be tweaked with the secret dip switch menu. So like I think it came by default with Chun-Li and Honda stored super either on or off. I can't remember, but you could access a secret dip switch menu and turn a lot of things on and off. It still wasn't super accurate. There was still definitely differences, but I still think outside of the modern stuff, like, you know, playing classic mode on HDR and on 30th and stuff like that, and even 30th has the speed problems, I think it's still the most accurate of all the versions that have existed previous to... I'm trying to think of the anniversary edition that had that was Hyper Street Fighter 2. That's right.
Oh yeah, I was gonna bring that up as well.
Yeah, that was Hyper with Third Strike. That actually wasn't even classic Street Fighter. It's Super Turbo. That's right. So yeah, I think this one was still the best version that we had available to us at the time, outside of 3DO, but we don't talk about that. So you know.
It's because I think there was like the rivalry between East West Coast, and then like, hey, does this version count? And you know, there's a bit of a controversial photo, I guess, that I found. It's gonna be sorry, I gotta do it for the lulz, but this was a money match, right? Do you know what happened with it? Because I think there's a controversial person in this photo, so we have Afro Legends and DSP. Tell me about it.
Afro Legends won this one, right? If I'm not mistaken. DSP, I mean, we played, this was the one year that it was on the PS2. We were playing the classics version or something like that, and definitely had a bunch of stuff that messed up a lot of players. I remember Kuni was really mad because on that version, they changed it to only hitting 2 buttons to do the lariat. So if you try to hit all 3 at the same time, it was easier to get the lariat, right? But the thing about it is, every time he did lariat, he plinked 2 buttons to give himself a better chance of doing the SPD. And a lot of times it would come out as a lariat instead of spinning pile driver. So he was frustrated. There was a lot of different changes, like Balrog behaved differently, but DSP beat like Watson at that tournament. And so he was talking a lot of smack at the time.
It's like it wasn't a real game.
And I think in this money match, Afro Legends won this one. I'm pretty sure he did, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, DSP obviously a very controversial figure. He even won one of the Evo Easts versus Seth Killian. He beat Seth Killian in grand finals. I have that video on my YouTube, actually. So I probably should have pointed that out to you too. I have a lot of really old school matches on YouTube as well. So yeah,
we gotta preserve that stuff. You know, that's history. And people are gonna ask 20, 30 years from now about the ST scene. You know, someone's gonna have all those videos backed up.
In 2002, I was a big believer in this. That's why I took those photos. That's why those are some of the only photos, because I took it upon myself to do that. I also bought a video camera the next year, and I started recording film. And so I have actually a shoebox of probably about like 50 to 60 mini DV tapes, including the Daigo parry. I have the actual,
The OG.
the original tape that Seth Killian used to record the Daigo parry is in my closet downstairs right now.
Damn, that is lore. I never read that anywhere. Is that like a common, like, is that a known thing or?
I mean, I've talked about it that I have it, but it doesn't like it's not a widespread common knowledge thing.
Yeah.
All I've said is that there was one point in time Chris Eglia and I talked about, Chris Eglia who runs Tenno Media, about actually going to a recording studio and capturing every single clip, splitting them up, documenting them so we could be like, I want to look for footage of Ricky Ortiz, and we'll find every clip of that had Ricky Ortiz in it, or I want to find every clip of Third Strike Yun, and we can find every clip. I really wanted to create like a Getty museum of FGC stuff, and like I said, I took it upon myself because one of the reasons why I do this fighting game stuff is even back then in 2002, when it was still small and super niche, I truly believed that it could get to that point where documenting the history was going to be important. And here we are. And like I said, that's why my collection, there was that Street Fighter encyclopedia that came out just recently by Steve Hendershot.
I think I own that. Yeah, I have that.
Yeah. Some of the photos in there are from the Flickr set because I was the only one that had like some pictures of Golfland and stuff like that. So some of those pictures in there you'll actually see are credited to me because I'm one of the only people that really had this drive to document a lot of this stuff. Because like I said, I said about the philosophy with commentary, it's kind of say I'm just a big fighting game fanboy,
Yeah.
And to me, it is the most important thing because it's so awesome. And so it was important to me to document all these things. And so early on, like I said, I bought a capture card to record combo videos. I also bought a digital camera very early on.
Those were expensive back then.
Yeah. I had a good job when I came out of college.
Those cost a pretty penny, so.
Yeah. But I did it specifically to take pictures at Evo and stuff. So that was kind of the aim of mine to do.
All right.
Oh, God.
Look at these guys.
Oh, my God. You can't even recognize Daigo. You can barely recognize him. Oh, my God.
I think if you show someone who just got into Street Fighter V and knows what everyone looks like, if you show them this photo, it'd be like, who's that in the middle? But if I zoom into this, I'm trying to look at the envelope to see how much money. What is that?
It looks like
$500,
400, 500, or something like that. Yeah. But that
was for second place, I think.
That's Nuki on the right. That's John Choi on the left. And of course, Mr. Daigo Umehara in the middle, looking ever as expressive as he always does.
Oh my God.
Yeah. But yeah, back then when we won a tournament, we got 400. Like, seeing if it says $400 or $500 actually feels like a lot of money to me, given the time. Like, we really didn't make a lot from these events at all. And even one of the Evo trailers that I made, it was one of the years that Toyota sponsored. And at the end of the tournament, I put this quote from Justin Wong because every tournament had a $5,000 pot bonus. And Justin's like, he's like, oh yeah, this means a lot. $5,000 means a lot to people and stuff. And I put it at the end of the trailer. And like some people were like, are you sure you should put that in there? Because yeah, that sounds like a lot to you, but that's really nothing.
Hey man, 5,000 is still a lot now. When in Texas when they run these big tournaments, like 10K, that's huge.
Absolutely.
That's a lot.
Oh man.
And then
this is John Choi in the ever unprecedented 2 Street Fighter win year. This is him defeating Nuki in grand finals. And remember, he also won CVS 2 earlier this year. This is when his father was sick. I can't remember if he had passed away already at this point. I think he was still sick. And no, he hadn't passed away because John was like, I'll stay home. I won't go to the tournament. And for those of you who've seen Bang the Machine, we've seen John Choi's dad make fun of him for playing these video games. But this time, John Choi's dad was like, no, you go. You do this because this is important to you. And John said that like clarity that it gave him made him play like he had never played before. And so that year, like I said, he won Super Turbo and CVS2, which to this day is still almost unprecedented because those were like two of the big major main games there. And winning both of those in the same year was amazing. And he did it against Nuki and Kokojin, who are like two of the best at those games.
No, D44 Boss.
Oh, you're right. It was Boss. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right.
That makes it even more impressive because he beat the greatest players in the world at the time, basically. I mean, between Nuki and Otochun for ST. But yeah, this was... I don't remember if I was watching this live or if I saw it right after, like shortly after, but I remember watching like what am I even watching right now? Yeah. And, you know, just with the way that things have been going now, I'm so like happy. And I think we're all fortunate that, you know, we can create this bond. Like we have, Wednesday Night Fights happening every week, and you know John Choi's making himself available on playing games.
That's
and
right.
And like we're, you know, I can just
using
ask
those
him about
macros,
stuff from back then.
You know,
the Macrolorian himself. But it's such an amazing thing. And then you ask him something about like, man, you won CVS2. He goes, yeah, I guess. I mean, that was all right. Like, are you serious?
That sounds exactly like it.
Like, what are you talking about, man? It's incredible.
Right.
Like, how did you beat? Like, yeah, this is a great photo. Basically,
yeah, dude. Actually,
bring this one.
I don't even remember this photo, and I'm looking at it. I'm like, wow, what a nice catch on my part, catching this photo. Yeah. So, but I mean, again, it's the same kind of thing, right? Choi was playing from the heart. He probably wasn't thinking at all in any of those matches, right? He was just probably just like, this is what needs to happen, what I need to do. And like I said, that weird clarity just kind of probably unfogged everything, and it just all came from the heart. And so when you ask him about it, he's like, yeah, I guess.
Yeah, because specifically I asked him about his Street Fighter 4 match against Daigo. I was like, man, like, you did this thing and you did that and you didn't jump. And, you know, he goes, yeah, whatever. It just happened. Daigo wasn't, you know, fully prepared for Ryu, and yeah, whatever. I was like, no, like, you played with your heart, man. Yeah, so I love John.
That's one of my favorite things about John Choi versus Alex Valle. Honestly, like when you watch Bang the Machine, and if you ever had a chance at Evo to watch Bang the Machine, like the scenes that show Alex Valle, like so much of Alex Valle reminds me of Kobe Bryant. The swagger, the kind of like, he walks into a room and he knows he's the best. You know, he has that kind of swagger, and he just like, he knows he's the best in there. And then you have John Choi, who's just like quiet and like doesn't say much. And these guys were the rivals, and it was really interesting. And, you know, you should ask them about the story. They could tell it. But the first time that they actually became friends is when they were both flown out to fight in the Midwest in Street Fighter 3 New Generations. And they got trapped in the Phoenix airport at the same time. And they just started talking, and they kind of became good friends. And, you know, I heard that Mike Watson actually got mad at Vi for becoming friends with Choi. He's like, you can't become friends.
The enemy.
Yeah, basically, you can't become friends with your rivals. It makes you lose your, you know, the passion and stuff.
So Cobra Kai of him.
Right? And, but I mean, in the end, you know, Vi and Choi are good friends now. And I that's another one of those stories that I love, because they did start as rivals and they ended up becoming two really good friends, you know, and you see it now, you know, like you said, John Choi helping out with some of the Wednesday Night Fights commentary with Vi. They play each other in Alpha 2 all the time. So it's really cool.
Yeah, it's some sick stuff. Yeah, man. There's just so much story, and, you know, hope to have John, Alex. I hope to get everyone on here at some point. Yeah. But definitely you know, we got to kick off season 2 with you. I'm just gonna throw out some random photos now. Okay. So we kind of just went through a couple of the Evos. Now you shared this one with me, actually. So.
Yeah, this was at one of the first E3s before E3 became a big thing, and they had a tournament there, and one of my friends got me in. Actually, I think it was LA Akira who got me in, because Gerald, because he worked for Game Fan at the time. So if you could see my badge, I'm definitely not James Chen there. I'm like Steve somebody or Tom whatever, you know, but they had a Marvel Superheroes tournament, and, you know, it was all businessmen. Nobody knew how to play the game. Nobody knew what they were doing, except that guy who I'm standing next to, who is named Matt, aka Lord BBH. This was the first time that I had ever met Lord BBH. He's still involved in the FGC. He does a lot of old school streams and stuff. And
amazing gamer, by the way. Amazing. Yeah. Absolutely amazing.
And so there was this Marvel Super Heroes tournament. Everybody was coming up and playing, and it was just like whatever was happening. And then I went up to play my first match, and the first thing I did was fight, jump, jab short, strong, dash, short, forward, right, launch, da, 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 boom. And in the audience, you could just hear all of a sudden start going, oh my God, wait, you could do this in this game? Oh, and like people started getting hyped for the game and stuff, except for the poor guy I was beating up probably. But like I was blowing everybody up, and it got to grand finals with me and Lord BBH. And BBH has told me before, he was like, man, I thought I was gonna win until I saw you were in the tournament. I was so mad. And I won it with Shuma Gorath. I was so proud of myself and stuff. But as a grand prize, they gave me a PlayStation 1 copy of Resident Evil, which you see me holding there. And then the Capcom guys, the reps at the booth, were like, holy crap, that was amazing. Thanks for making the game look so awesome and stuff. Here's a bunch of Alpha 2 keychains.
Oh yeah, you gotta send me the picture when you get it. I'll post it up.
I actually brought up all of my Alpha 2 keychains because I wasn't sure if we were gonna have a camera or not. So I'm gonna take a picture of these right now. I have them hanging from a coat hanger. They're really hard to see because the lighting is bad, and my cat is trying to get into the picture now. But I'll try to take better pictures and send them to you later. But I still have all those keychains, and I was just like, I was so happy. It was such a cool memory, and I can't believe. So this picture, the guy that I do co-commentary with, Chris Tang, also is a super old school fighting game guy. Has worked at Capcom before, done a bunch of stuff like that. And he actually had an old newsletter that he wrote from this E3 that had this photo in black and white. But I had never been able to find this photo again until literally like 2 weeks ago. The guy who took this photo messaged me randomly on Twitter. It's like, hey, James, I don't know if you remember this, but I took this picture at E3. I was like, what? Oh my God. And so that's why I had it right there to send to you, because he had just sent it to me on Twitter, and I was like, what the heck? I was like, you were the one who took this picture? Oh my God. And so it was really cool.
What timing?
Actually, I don't know if I tagged BBH in it or if he was already tagged. I'm gonna have to check later. So
yeah, this is pretty awesome. Like, kind of one of the origin stories as well. That Wolverine is pretty buff, but I don't know if it's like real or a costume.
I think those are fake muscles.
All right, it's hard to tell in the photo.
Yeah.
All right, then we got
so Chris Tang. That's Chris Tang on the left right there. I just mentioned him. But that's myself. So I talked about meeting TZW. Honestly, like, sorry TZW, but meeting Alexei Pajitnov, the creator of Tetris himself.
That's so dope. Oh my God.
Like, if you had told me 15, 20 years ago that I would ever have a chance to meet Alexei Pajitnov, the creator of Tetris, and then he would tell me that he loved my commentary. Oh my God. Like, I would have never believed you. Like, to me, this was like one of the craziest and greatest moments of my life, just being able to meet him in person like this. I never ever would have guessed that this could have happened. And like I said, Tetris is my favorite game of all time. I could write a thesis on why the game is just so perfect and wonderful, and why like it's been so hard for puzzle games really to match its artistic splendor. And sorry if you hear all the rubbing, that's my cat hitting the microphone right now. So, but yeah, like meeting Alexei Pajitnov is just, oh man, I can't even express to you in words how wonderful this was, and like how giddy I mean, you can see it on my face.
It's incredible. Yeah,
I was so beside myself. It was wonderful. It was so awesome.
And he has a pretty decked out like blazer. Dude,
I want that blazer.
Yeah, is it for sale? That's kind of fly.
I know, right? I need to find out if I can get one.
Man, it's so cool. Yeah, I just randomly stumbled upon. It was like right after. I forget if it was the 2017 Classic Tetris World Championships. I just went on YouTube once. I'm like, you know what? I just want to look up Tetris videos, and and I'm listening to commentary. I'm like, this guy sounds a lot like James Chen. I just kept listening. I'm like, and then they showed you at the end. I'm like, what the hell it is, James? What are you doing there? That's how I found out you do the commentary. It just caught me off guard.
Yeah. Oh man. Oh, and also, just as a little aside, I mean, obviously, sad news, but RIP to Jonas Neubauer, who was, I think the winner of that particular event, but just passed away at the beginning of this year. Really was one of the most important people for the Tetris scene. So definitely.
Yeah, seven-time world champ, right?
Mm-hmm.
Actually, at the end of this, I do have community questions, and one of the community questions was, if you could talk about Jonas for a little bit, your interactions with him.
Absolutely. Sure.
I mean, you could do it if you'd like to do it now.
Oh, right now? Yeah, I mean, Jonas, like, one of the things that I say about him is, like, when I first showed up, like I said, I found out of the group through that Facebook posting and a friend telling me about it. After I did that little exhibition for them, they were like, we really like your commentary. Do you want to come and do the main event? And I had heard about the Classic Tetris World Champions. I just never had a chance to go there. Now they were like, hey, do you want to do commentary? I was like, let's do this, right? And so I went there, but when I showed up, I was still new. I didn't know anybody really. And the two top players at the time, Jonas Neubauer and Harry Hong. Harry Hong knew me from the fighting game community. He was big into fighting games already, so he already knew me from this. So he's like, oh, you're James Chen. Hey, I'm like super glad to meet you and all this stuff. Jonas didn't really know me, but the thing is, Jonas is just that kind of person that's so warm and friendly and welcoming and just like good spirited. And so like, I met him, I was like, hi Jonas, I know you're the 7-time champion, whatever. And he was like, oh, hey, what? And I gotta tell you, man, like, he instantly made me feel welcome. Him and his wife, actually, both of them wonderful people. And you could not have asked for a better representative for Tetris, to be the 7-time champion. Even after getting dethroned by Joseph, he started traveling the world. He would travel to Europe to be a special guest over there. He went to China, did a special match with Japan's Korean, I think it was.
Korean.
Korean in Japan. I think it was in China or something like that. But, he was just an absolutely wonderful person, always friendly. I was like, someone else always tried to get me and Jonas to do a collab stream because we both lived in LA. Then the pandemic hit, so that kind of ruined that. And, obviously now I've missed my chance, and it's just like one of those, oh God, I feel so bad. But, I told myself I wanna get a max out in Tetris in honor of Joseph this year, so I gotta get on the ball for that.
Yeah, I gotta get on the grind.
But
I remember watching like a post-tournament kind of interview. I think it might have been when he lost to, dang it, what's his name? Joseph.
Joseph
Sealy. Is that
Yeah.
And I just remember like what he said at the end. Jonas gave like a speech. It was just like so humble.
Yeah, right.
It's like, man, like this is like, even if he didn't win that one, like that dude is a champion. Like, it shows from what he accomplished in Tetris. I was like, man, this dude's awesome.
Yeah, he knew what it meant for Joseph to win, that it could signal a new, basically, batch of players. And it basically was like the Classic Tetris World Championships, the first one that I went to, it was basically like Evo 2007, 2008. You knew everybody there. Everybody knew each other. Nobody new was showing up in the scene. And you just kind of had this feeling it was going to die eventually. Street Fighter 4 changed that, and for Classic Tetris, Joseph winning did that for their scene. And this past year, the top 8 were all young, brand new people to the scene. And, Jonas knew that. As soon as Joseph beat him, he knew that's what it meant. And that's what he kind of said in the speech. He's like, he recognized how important it was for the scene. And, it's probably more important for the scene that Joseph won than it was for him to win. And so, it kind of shows that maturity level and that humbleness that he had. And yeah, absolutely. Jonas was just, like when I first was told the news, like it was crushing, right? Because it's like, you always wonder to yourself, why does it always have to happen to like the best of people out there? And he clearly was the best that the Tetris scene had. You know, he was literally the best, and it's hard, but you know, his name will always be associated with Tetris, I think, and so, you know.
Yeah, he's the ambassador, basically.
Yeah,
like he's it's pretty incredible. All right, guys, so that's going to do it for this episode of Super Lore Boys. I want to give a huge shout out to James Chen for always being down to chat and sharing his amazing stories. Tune in next Sunday to hear part 2 of the James Chen lore. Otherwise, the Street Fighter 2, the online Warrior Tournament, will start at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time today, so stick around. Thank you for watching.